The people gathered around the starry array, questioning the young palace master and her people relentlessly. Yun Yanli secretly listened to their interrogations for a moment, and finally understood. The people thought that this spiritual array was endowed to him by the god from heaven. It was an auspicious array that could save the world. It made the blood rain stop early, so it definitely had magical abilities. The people wanted to protect it and ensure that no one touched it. On the other hand, the young palace master claimed that this was a sinister array given by an evil person. She said they needed to do a thorough investigation. Nonetheless, the people of the city were unmoving and did not allow anyone to enter. Some of the city's dwellers were skilled masters in their own right. Therefore, they were certainly no pushovers. The young palace master tried to negotiate with them. She said that the array was beneath the official residence of the city's owner, and therefore, people should not station themselves there. Needless to say, her attempt to chase the people away was in vain. Frustrated, the young palace master knew that she might need to kill a few chickens to scare away the monkeys. Hence, she openly fired and killed a master who blocked her path. Unfortunately, her actions did not serve to scare them away. Instead, more people started to rally against them. To the onlookers, this matter was of utmost importance. It was more than just their own lives, since destroying the arrays could lead to the revitalization of the entire Shura world. Therefore, everyone was ready to fight for it. The two parties locked heads and started openly confronting one another to find the middle ground. While listening to the arguments between the two parties, Yun Yanli also took the opportunity to look at the starry array. His heart almost sank to the ground when he saw what had happened. It had completely changed. Yun Yanli could instantly tell that the pattern of the spiritual crystal arrangement had changed to the point where he did not even recognize it anymore. The culprit behind the array was still levitating in midair, while contemplating his next move. He chose to come to the grounds and try to sort out the mess himself. After all, Yun Yanli was once a prince in the upper bound. With his noble identity, the people still admired him and found him somewhat mysterious. Perhaps he could fool them. Even though Yun Yanli was obviously exhausted from the wild and fruitless chase that he had been led on, he still cleaned up his appearance and carried himself well. His robe was fluttering in the wind when he fell from the sky, and a strong aura surrounded his body. The aura he emitted from his body was enough to keep the crowd silent. With his presence in the area, the young palace master and her team finally breathed an air of relief. Their savior had come. The palace master quickly came forward to greet him and bowed respectfully. However, the onlookers only looked at each other and did not bow to him for the first time. A lot of suspicious stares fell on him, which made Yun Yanli feel rather uncomfortable. He kept quiet, pretending not to be aware of the situation. He asked, "What happened here?" The young palace master started to elaborate on what had happened. She said that when they were searching for the culprit behind this evil array, the official residence exploded and exposed the starry array. She also noted that this unknown array was probably wicked and had to be sealed off from the public. The people jeered at that remark. They said that there was auspiciousness in this array, and it was this array that dispelled the blood rain and bloodbaths in advance. Collectively, they had sworn to protect this array with their lives, and nothing would move them. The two parties continued to scoff at each other's remarks to the point where they almost ended up fighting again. Yun Yanli listened quietly to the entire story and tried to appear as though he was impartial. He lifted his hand and demanded silence from the crowd. Once they kept quiet, he said, "Guys, I did not see the god that you were referring to, so I will not comment about that person for the time being. But this array. It was not the god who endowed you with the blessings. Ancient immortals had left it here more than 100 years ago, and it continues to be the source of power for the wizardry barrier that protects the city. Without it, the wizardry barrier would not exist. That being said, inheriting the array has been a serious responsibility. I had to continually replace the spiritual crystals inside it just so that it could maintain its normal operation. The spiritual crystals provided by all of you are used to maintain this array." With only a few sentences, he seemed to take credit for the array and its shielding properties. The dwellers of Lugua City, being experts in ranging fields, would not be easily convinced. Some people immediately questioned, City owner Yun, we believe that this spiritual array existed since a long time ago, but its functions seem different from what you have mentioned. Otherwise, why didn't it put an end to the blood rain before? Why didn't it emit the clear light that it did to dispel the dark clouds? After the god changed the spiritual array, the blood rain stopped early, and now we do not even need the barrier. The crowd started to get rowdy again at that remark. Everyone had suffered from the calamity of the blood rain and bats. They had to change their lifestyles because of it and probably even lost the lives of a few loved ones. Therefore, unless an absolutely concrete explanation could be given, they were not about to let things go. In fact, the way they had spoken to Yun Yanli was rather rude, which clearly gave away how they felt about him now. The young palace master was trying to stifle her anger. Her blood was boiling in her veins. She was indeed a loyal subordinate to Yun Yanli. She actually admired him as a person. Hence, she would not let anyone be disrespectful to him. She could still bear with it if someone insulted her, but if they insulted Yun Yanli, she would not stand there and do nothing about it. She pinched her fingers together, and a blue glow suddenly appeared in her palm. However, before she had time to do anything with it, Yun Yanli had grabbed her hand. Her heart jumped, and she quickly turned to look at him. Yun Yanli shook his head and sent her a directed audio. These people are still useful to us. Just pay attention to the few leaders who are blocking our way now. We will clean them up later. However, do not do anything now. The obedient young palace master did as told, and remained silent. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli maintained his calm in a sea of chaos. Despite the mean things said to him by the public, he still remained calm and listened to the people. Over time, he could tell that the jeers from the crowd were getting milder. Perhaps, people were starting to feel uncertain about the situation. When the accusations stopped, Yun Yanli calmly said, "Guys, I have carefully checked the array. This starry array has indeed been changed. However, in no way is it an improvement from before. Instead, it seems to be out of control. There were no evil spirits on the original spiritual crystals, but right now all the crystals seem to be wrapped with a lot of the grievances. The so-called god that you saw earlier is very cunning. He wanted to provoke our relationship and take advantage of it." Yun Yanli then lifted his sleeves and seemed to chant a spell. A wave of white light flashed across the array, and almost instantly, the entangled grievances on the spiritual crystals became obvious. Although the spirits seemed to be rather tame, the crowd could definitely tell that they were present. Since the people could not see the spirits earlier, they were now shocked by what they saw and took a few abrupt steps back. This certainly caused a stir among the crowd as they were dubious of what had actually happened, and did not know if they could trust Yun Yanli. Seeing an opportunity to turn things around, Yun Yanli continued, "In recent years, the devils have been eager to conquer our human world. The blood rain and bloodbats are their despicable creations, but through our unity, we could work together to resist the devil's supernatural tricks for more than hundreds of years. Failing to defeat us, they have come up with a new evil plan to provoke our relationship and let us mess it up ourselves. Please don't be fooled by the devil. Yesterday, the poisonous swamp had encountered a big problem, so I went there to investigate the situation, and found that the people of the devil world were the culprits behind it. We also received a report saying that the people of the devil kingdom sneaked into our city last night, and waited for the opportunity to destroy it. Therefore, I had asked my people to search the whole city for them. Then, they took this opportunity to destroy the starry array and tried to frame it on me." Yun Yanli seemed to have devised his plan well. The logic behind each incident was consistent, and no one could find loopholes in it. It seemed to be airtight. Chapter 2485. Kuanpeng 2. The palace master was also very intelligent. Following his line of explanations, she said, "Everyone think about it. If the god that appeared last night was really an immortal who was sent from heaven to save human beings, why would he run away after he saw me? Obviously, he was guilty. However, because all of you confronted us, you gave him the opportunity to run away." In a way, part of the young palace master's explanations was true. The chaos in the city made it impossible for her to track Di Fui and Gu Shijiu. It would appear that the master and the servant complemented each other in this situation. Furthermore, The presence of the evil spirits had certainly convinced some people that they were mistaken. The people who were still unconvinced continued to question Yin Yanli. They pointed out that the blood rain stopped abruptly in the middle of the night, which was something the array was never able to do. Among the public, there was an exorcist master who was present. Using some tests, he could assess the fierceness of the grievances. Being a rather direct man, he stood up and said, "City owner, I am an exorcist master. Although there are evil spirits attached to the crystals, the presence of these grievances is not new. It has been more than a month since these people were killed. Furthermore, it looks like someone has purified the grievances recently, which is rather odd. Finally, the overall nature of this array is indeed auspicious. Any evil spirits have been subdued." Yin Yanli paid attention to the man. He recognized that this person was a famous exorcist master in the city. Moreover, he was quite popular and had a good reputation among the people. In fact, Ash finished speaking, someone immediately agreed with him. Yin Yanli had to pause for a moment to carefully address his concern. He knew that if he did not carefully address the point he raised, he would lose the faith of his people. He smiled and asked, "Don't you find the spirits rather aggressive?" He suddenly lifted his sleeves and wrapped his arms around the man's shoulder. "I invite you to go and verify it yourself." Using a spell, the person was brought directly into the array. In the people's eyes, they only saw him use his sleeves to throw this person into the array. However, the innocent exorcist master felt as though he was attacked by a giant python. His internal organs were instantly displaced, and he could not even utter a word. In the array, he was stumbling about as if some wicked spirits had taken control of his body when, in fact, he was suffering from severe pain. After a while, he seemed to have fallen on a spiritual crystal. The slumbering grievances smelled the food, and immediately swooped toward the exorcist master. Sadly, the public witnessed the exorcist master being ripped apart. Utterly shocked by what they saw, everyone seemed to take a step back subconsciously. They did not want to be next. Yin Yanli dismissively asked, "Who here still does not believe that this is a vicious array?" Everyone retreated further. Watching the evil spirits eat up their acquaintance, they were no longer willing to question the truth of his statement. Yin Yanli continued, "Recently, the devils have gone rampant. Some people in our human world have secretly turned into spies for the devils, and took the opportunity to confuse people. He is one of them. I have not interrogated him, and he actually came to me himself. What is the use of having such a person here? It is not good for the stability of our city." Playing this card naturally shocked the people. Moreover, they would not want to raise any conflicting points against Yin Yanli at this moment, as they were afraid to be seen to be working with the devil. Yin Yanli's eyes swept through the crowd, knowing that he had achieved his desired purpose. He smirked in his heart. Yin Yanli was a leader in the upper bound who was in charge of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Thus, he was good at playing politics. There had also been many thorns among the soldiers in the past. They either disappeared or grew to become loyal to Yin Yanli. No one else in the crowd dared to voice their concerns. Even though the people in the city were capable warriors, they were not stronger than the soldiers that the city owner had in place. It would not even be a challenge for Yin Yanli to end to all of their lives. It seemed that the man from heaven had succeeded in manipulating his people once again. As he felt confident that he had achieved his goal, he decided to play the good cop role and comfort the people of the city. In a humble tone he spoke, "Everyone can rest assured. I know that most people here are good people, and the reason why you chose to side with troublemakers is that you were confused by the situation. I do not blame you. However, the devils have installed many spies in our city. I will investigate the matter seriously and promptly take out the bad guys so that Lugwa City will be a harmonious place again." Yin Yanli wanted to make sure that he could arrest the city dwellers that had gone against him earlier. Furthermore, he knew that his strategy to silence the crowd worked. The man had basically stopped a riot before it even began. The young palace master looked at him with complete admiration. She truly respected him from the bottom of her heart. Unfortunately, since there were ordinary people amongst the crowd, some of them were naturally less intelligent than the rest. They insisted that Yin Yanli explain why the bloody rain stopped in the middle of the night. Although the rest of the people did not say anything, it was undeniable that they were also curious as to how the blood rain magically stopped. It was clear from their faces. Yun Yanli smirked but finally provided them with an explanation. The blood rain and bloodbats are extremely evil things. I suspect that the people from the Devil Kingdom created them. They want to take control of the Shura world. I believe that, in order to confuse the people here, they sent someone to pretend to be God and pretend to rescue the people. To make it more convincing, they stopped the blood rain and bats. I have been investigating this matter for some time, and found out that this strange and dangerous occurrence is somehow linked to the poisonous swamp. Thus, I sent our people over to investigate it. Upon discovering that the swamp was cursed, we used holy fire to destroy the wildland. Perhaps, the blood rain had stopped abruptly because of the destruction of the poisonous swamp. Although Yun Yanli appeared to be done with his explanation, he seemed to think of something to add. I have also caught the sea dragon who is the custodian of the Devil King. He is the one who created the blood rain. He threw the net in his hand on the ground as proof. Kuan-Zui's body could be seen lying inside the net. The crowd was surprised to see the creature. Naturally, they wondered if the sea dragon was really a custodian of the Devil King. It was certainly very beautiful. The captivated crowd wanted to determine the gender of the creature. They were really curious to learn more. The people in the Shura world were aware of the existence of a sea dragon in this world. Its shape was like a snake, but its head was like a tyrannosaurus. It was known to be extremely fierce and would only emerge when there was a storm. In fact, whenever people chanced upon it, a natural disaster seemed to have struck them. Hence, the people of the Shura world generally feared the creature. Never in their wildest imaginations had they expected it to be so beautiful. Kuan Shui had been woken up. He blinked and looked at everyone curiously too. His distinct watery eyes seemed to connect with everyone's eyes in the area. Although he was unaware of the nature of the situation, any onlooker could tell that the creature seemed to be smiling. However, what he uttered almost annoyed everyone there. What a group of idiots! The curious crowd turned indignant in just a moment. How could a sea dragon that was captured in a net and on the brink of death be so arrogant? After that snide remark, many people asked for this dragon to be killed, so as to send a warning to the Devil Tribe. Yun Yanli was also trying to use Kuan Shui to distract the crowd, and perhaps even bring them back to his side. He was delighted by their reaction to the sea dragon's derogatory remark. Some people had started throwing stones, and even rotten eggs at the creature as Yun Yanli stood there watching everything unfold. The net that Yun Yanli utilized to capture the creature was a very unique and powerful weapon. It was very flexible and could expand and contract at will. Furthermore, it was made of a highly rigid material, which would make it almost impossible for anyone to escape. Last but not least, this net could also absorb the spiritual power of the people in its grasp, so even if Yun Yanli released his captive, they could only beg for mercy at his feet. Blaming Kuan Shui for the recent events, Yun Yanli obviously despised the creature. Initially, he had cast a spell around him as an added layer of protection. However, in order to allow his people to vent their hatred at the creature, he lifted his sleeves and removed the protective layer. Therefore, the stones and rotten eggs that were thrown at Kuan Shui made him look disheveled. Strangely, Kuan Shui was not annoyed at all. He just put his arms under his chin and lay there in the net while taking the abuse. In fact, he even licked the egg and taunted them. Hey, I initially thought that you people were at least a little intellectual. However, it seems like all of you are just stupid. Everyone was even more annoyed by his last statement. Yun Yanli faintly said, Kuan Yunjan, don't attack my people. Now that your trick has been revealed, what do you have to say for yourself? Kuan Shui ignored him and continued to glance at the faces around him. In fact, to judge whether this array is good or bad is very simple. Let's see if there are any more blood bats and blood rain after 10 days. Also, since it is the source of power for the wizardry barrier over the city, other cities should also have it. If you all are free, you can go and have a look at the other arrays and see if there are any grievances on the spiritual crystals. People in the crowd seemed to be finally coming to their senses. His statement was rather accurate. They could go and check the array in the other cities and compare it with the one here. If what Yin Yanli said was true, then they would know that he was not the culprit behind all these evil calamities in the Shura world. Some people in the crowd finally mustered the courage to ask, "City owner, perhaps you can speak to the owners of the other cities and ask them to check on their starry array. It will certainly clear any doubts that we currently have about the nature of this array." Yes, since the starry arrays are used to protect the city, they are naturally auspicious. Everyone will understand what we mean once they look at it. Everyone is actually very suspicious after yesterday night's incident. Any sorts of rumors could be spread around. If you can prove that other starry arrays are also auspicious, no one will ever doubt you again. They will also ignore the so-called god that came to Lugua City earlier. The last few remarks echoed throughout the crowd. However, Yin Yanli did not seem to care. This is certainly possible, and I do not object to it. However, the other cities are quite far away from here. If you want to check on the other starry arrays, I strongly recommend that only 3 to 5 credible people go to a nearby city. After I am done with my official duties for the day, I can take them with me to a neighboring city to check. He spoke confidently and seemed unconcerned, which helped pull even more people to his side. Yin Yanli's sharp eyes then fell on Kuan Shui the moment he was done. He coldly said, "You, the devil's subordinate, I can't believe you are still trying to provoke my people in order to make us divided. I will never allow you to do so." Kuan Shui gave him a thumbs up as a response. "You are good at deceiving. When you asked everyone to recommend 3 to 5 people, you were thinking of bribing them, right? Even if you are not able to bribe all of them, you can just kill the disobedient ones off and report their death through some fake news. I am sure these people would still believe you." Yin Yanli remained silent but had a murderous look in his eyes. This sea dragon always exposed his wretched plans. Chapter 2488. Kuan Peng 5. Nonetheless, no matter how irritated he actually felt with the creature, he could conceal his emotions rather well. With a smile, he politely said, "Only you, the surviving member of the Devil clan, will gauge the heart of a gentleman with your own wicked measure. I will make sure that the chosen ones will go and return together. What do you have to say about that?" Playing the game of politics, Yin Yanli clearly garnered the upper hand. This dragon likes to confuse right and wrong. That is right. Governor, the dragon has disguised itself as a beautiful creature to deceive us. We should turn it into its original form. The heated discussion continued. Among the crowd, Yin Yanli's men were cursing the loudest. They were eager for Kuan Shui to become the scapegoat and make their master the good guy again. Our governor is our real savior. Most of you are unaware that our governor is a descendant from the upper bound. His spiritual power is higher than that of a mighty immortal. He is here to investigate the cause behind Shura World's unusual blood rain that has been going on for years. Having tied everything back to the Devil clan, he wants to exterminate them once and for all. His goal is to give everyone here a peaceful life. The young palace master chimed in. Astonished, the people looked at Yin Yanli in disbelief. You have to believe what I have just said. How long has Governor Yin taken over Lugua City? In just a short time, he has done so many good deeds for us. For example, the poisonous swamp no longer exists. He has even caught this evil dragon from the Devil clan so that it will not harm the innocent. The young palace master continued to brainwash the people. The news caused a stir in the crowd. Some suggested that Governor Yin should turn the dragon back to its original form, so that it would not continue deceiving the people. Yin Yanli thought the same. He did not expose the dragon's original appearance earlier because he was concerned about its size and thought that it would not be convenient to carry such a gigantic creature around. Now that he had already returned to the city, it was time to use the dragon to build his fame. He put his fingers together and seemed to move it in a repetitive motion while looking at Kuan Shui sternly. I will reveal your true appearance to the people. How dare a dragon challenge the peace and order of society? A streak of white light flashed and surrounded Kuan Zui's entire body. The light was extremely bright that it could be blinding to those who stared at it the entire time. It seemed to have formed a light shield around the creature, and some form of spiritual power could be seen bouncing about within like streaks of lightning. The crowd waited breathlessly for the final form of the dragon, and as the light slowly faded, everyone was astonished by what they eventually saw. The spiritual net was there, but the creature was nowhere to be seen. Everyone gasped in astonishment. In fact, Yin Yanli was equally shocked. He could not believe that something so unexpected would occur after casting the same powerful spell that had worked like a charm every single time before. The true form of any beings would be easily revealed under the spell, but apparently, not this time. More worryingly, the dragon was nowhere to be seen. Had he run away? Yin Yanli took a step forward and lifted the net to have a closer look. It was empty. Determined, he decided to give the net a shake to see if the creature had turned invisible, but there was still nothing. The crowd looked at one another, at a loss of what to do. They quietly waited for an explanation from Yin Yanli. The man intended to show off his skills but was forced to deal with embarrassment in the end. He was ready to cast another spell to search for the lost being's whereabouts, but was stopped by a sudden disruption. He looked up and was shocked to find that something had blocked out the sun. The crowd noticed that something was not right and looked up immediately. Oh no! What is that? A giant fish. What a huge fish! In the midst of daylight, a giant fish suddenly made a surprising entrance. The size of its body was almost mountainous, stretching across the sky in a prosperous golden color. Only a small part of its body was revealed, however. Even without the head and the tail, people could still recognize that it was some sort of fish. Its fin moved a little to summon the shrieking wind that roared past the land. Rolls of dark clouds started to fill the sky, and in no time, torrential rain started to pour down on the people. Amidst the falling rain, the fish could be heard laughing. How could you call the man a celestial being when he could not even identify what I really am? All the man can do is to fool all of you mortals. The voice was coming from Kuan Shui. Kuan. It is a Kuan. A panicked voice called out. Oh my. A Kuan is a mythological creature. It is not a devil. Finally, someone who is not stupid. The Kuan made a swift turn in the air and disappeared into the clouds almost instantaneously. The giant fish was no longer in sight, but a giant bird suddenly appeared that shimmered in golden rays. It waved its enormous pair of wings, and the gale immediately reached its crescendo as the ground began to shake, and people started to lose their balance. With a thundering cry, the giant bird raced towards the edge of the sky and disappeared entirely. The crowd was absolutely stunned by what it had just witnessed. No one ever thought that they would be able to see this mythological creature in their lifetime. It was worth going through a hurricane to see it. The governor had publicly praised himself as a celestial being from the sky, and yet he mistook the mythological being as an ordinary dragon. All of a sudden, they started to lose faith in him. A Kuan, just like Bai Zhe and Kiran, was a well-known mythological being. They were also known to be associated with gods rather than devils. So how can they be evil? Hence, what the governor said might not be true after all. The young palace master was thoroughly annoyed, for her master's reputation was instantly tainted simply because this Kuan made an appearance. She knew that these unruly people would definitely be suspicious of the governor again. She turned to look at Yin Yanli to see if he was all right, and was shocked by his sudden leap into the air. Was he about to run away? Nonetheless, he left her a message before leaving. Lock the gate. No one is allowed to come in or leave the city. I will decide what to do when I return. Yin Yanli then disappeared into thin air, as swift as a streak of lightning. Meanwhile, the young palace master knew what she had to do. No one would have known that a Kuan could possibly exist in the Shura world. He had spared no effort in search of a mythological creature throughout his life, but was never successful. However, with his current predicament, he finally had the chance to tame a mythological creature. Yin Yanli's eyes glistened with a hopeful look. His hands slowly trembled in excitement, for he had finally found what he had been looking for. Determined, he used the most powerful tracking spell he knew and traveled at the greatest speed that he possibly could. He needed to find the creature and seize it alive. The creature was so powerful that flapping its wings seemed to cause a cyclone. He could be known both as Kuan and the Golden Winged Dapeng. Legends said that Kuan could travel for thousands of miles with one single flap. It was a false saying, however. The Golden Winged Dapeng was certainly very powerful, and did not have to flap its wings too much to travel a great distance. Nonetheless, it was not as dramatic as what people had been told. It was still the fastest creature in the world, though, and not even the Kirin or the nine-tailed fox could compete with it. Although Kuan Shui was weak, his injury did not affect his speed. He knew that his speed was practically unparalleled. As for Yun Yanli, since his wicked plots had been publicly announced, he would need to come up with a new alibi to gain the people's trust again. Otherwise, the people of Lugua City would definitely rise in rebellion against Yun Yanli, along with people from the other cities. Therefore, the golden-winged bird believed that Yun Yanli would not come after it, and would have to save his revenge for later. Besides, he was not afraid of the man. It was not easy to capture him anyway. Although the net that Yun Yanli used was a universal net that changed its size depending on the size of its prey, Kuan Shui could easily shrink to the size of an atom and escape. He did not struggle during the entire journey, because he wanted to buy more time for De Fuyas. Furthermore, he was curious about Yun Yanli's plan as well, and thought that sticking with him was the best way to learn more. His curiosity had led him to the big revelation of Yun Yanli's wicked plan. Their fight was certainly an exhausting one. Moreover, Kuan Shui had been trapped in the magic net for an extended period of time, long enough to burn away 2/3 of his spiritual power. After traveling for 100 miles, he could feel that his injuries slowed him down a little. In order to stay under the radar, Kuan Shui retook his human form as he continued his journey in the air. He enjoyed how the wind caressed him and the freedom that he had from traveling at such speeds in the air. The mythological creature was on his way to reunite with De Fui and tell him about the successful completion of the task assigned to him. Eager to share the news, he took out his directed audio spell and tried to contact De Fui. Aside from sharing the good news, he was also wondering if De Fui was suffering from the predicted outburst of spiritual power in his body. The call was not answered the first time, so he tried again. After a while, someone finally picked up the call. Kuan Shui eagerly spoke. "Master, I have not let you down. I kept Yun Yanli occupied for 16 hours. Before I left, I even exposed his plan publicly to the people of Lugua City. I believe that he will be busy taking care of the mess there, and will not have time for us. By the way, have you managed to overcome the matter related to the overflowing spiritual power in your body? You must stay strong and wait for me to return." It was clear from the tone of his voice that he was proud of his achievement. "Kuan Shui?" The voice of a woman replied. Kuan Shui was stunned, and his heart sank a little. He was often sent away from secret missions, and would only contact De Fui when absolutely necessary. Moreover, the directed audio spell was a very private item, so De Fui would not usually give it away to someone else. What had happened? In a more solemn tone he asked, "Miss Gu? What happened to the Devil King?" "He has gone into an isolated retreat," she softly said. She did not mean to lie, but some things should not be told over a call. Kuan Zui's mouth was ajar for a moment, for he could not believe that De Fui would isolate himself at such a time. It did not seem like what De Fui would normally do. Moreover, he was with the woman whom he needed to protect, so it did not make sense for him to abandon her. "May I have your location? I will join you soon." Gu Shijio roughly told him her whereabouts, and Kuan Shui obviously knew the place very well, so he made a quick calculation in his head. "Give me 15 minutes. I shall make my way there as soon as possible." "Miss Gu, please take care of my master," he firmly said. Swiftly, he put the directed audio spell away and turned into his original form. With a flap of his wings, he soared and began his journey at unparalleled speed. As soon as he left, Yun Yanli appeared from behind the clouds. With a sigh, his nonchalant expression slowly broke into a smile. Since the Kuan was finally going to meet up with De Fui and Gu Shijio, it would be his best shot to capture them all at once. Speedily he went after Kuan Shui. While chasing after him, Yun Yanli felt lucky to have caught up with the creature and overheard his conversation. Although he did not hear every detail, he was relatively sure that he was going to reunite with the couple. Even while traveling at full speed, the Kuan was still very alert to every sound and movement around him, so Yun Yanli dared not get too close. He watched as the giant bird swept across the air, and merely tailed it from a distance. However, all of a sudden, the bird changed its course and flew towards the south. After a few minutes, it turned southeast, and then after traveling for some time, it changed its course to the northeast direction. More than 30 minutes later, Yun Yanli realized that the mythological bird was actually flying in circles. What was going on? Was the motion in which he was flying a designated way to bypass Guzijius' wizardry barrier? Not knowing the actual reason behind the strange path, Yun Yanli decided to continue following the bird. 30 minutes later, he found himself still moving in a strange trail. Something was not right. Kuan Shui said that he would be with Gu Shijio and Di Fui in 15 minutes. It had been more than an hour. Had he been discovered? Yun Yanli decided to stop tailing the bird and determine his direction instead. However, in a sudden turn of events, the golden-winged bird turned around and rushed towards him at full speed. Surprised, Yun Yanli raised his hand and cast a dazzling streak of light towards the bird. The giant bird fluttered its wings quickly to generate a strong gust of wind that collided with his blinding streak of light. The two different forces opposed each other, creating powerful tremors that could be felt by anyone nearby. The giant bird seemed to have slanted to one side and was falling at a quick speed. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli moved back a little and steadied himself. It seemed that the giant bird had kept away its wings and transformed into its human form. Gracefully, his robes fluttered in the wind. "Mr. Yun, are you unwilling to let me go? Why are you following me around like a stubborn wife going after her husband? Do you really want me so badly?" In his human form, the creature had a unique look of a beautiful woman. However, the way he spoke was as hoarse as a man. Yun Yanli struggled to accept how to feel about it. "You knew that I was following you from the beginning." Yun Yanli's tracking spell was usually good enough to keep him under the radar. He had never been discovered before, which made this his first ever failure. How did the Kun manage to foil his plan? Perhaps lovers can understand each other without words. Kuan Shui then gave the man a few innocent winks. "Governor Yun, you are certainly obsessed with me, aren't you? That explains why you refused to let me leave." The creature then smiled at him. Yun Yanli was no longer interested in this man's pointless talk that had only served to deceive him over and over. He simply acknowledged the creature with a condescending sneer. "That is true. I really am in love with you. Now let me show you how eager I am to get you." He waved his hand, and a sword immediately appeared in his palm. He aimed the sword at Kuan Shui and launched a series of deadly moves toward him. It was undoubtedly a ferocious attack, so Kuan Shui did not have time to respond to Yun Yanli's last statement. While attempting to avoid his attacks, Kuan Shui could tell that Yun Yanli intended to end his life this time around. In fact, Kuan Shui did not know that Yun Yanli had been tailing him. It was Gu Shijio who suddenly reminded him to be careful of Yun Yanli, as the man's nature was very unpredictable. Therefore, he became alert and pretended to take a longer route while trying to assess if the man was really following him. Soon he was able to sense Yun Yanli's aura nearby. He was thankful for Gu Zijius' reminder. Otherwise, he would have brought the mad governor directly to Di Fui. He then circled the air a few times to confuse Yun Yanli before finally exposing him. He thought that Yun Yanli wanted him alive, so he was not worried about his safety. However, the current situation had proven otherwise. What had changed with Yun Yanli? Kuan Shui accidentally blurted his thoughts out loud while dodging the man's attacks. "Aren't you the Kuan? I have been looking for you for so long. I heard that there is a pearl inside each Kuan that can be refined and consumed. Apparently, it can help purify anyone's body. Hence, with the pearl, I will no longer need to worry about being obsessed with my practice." Yun Yanli had achieved his progress through the use of black magic. It was a shortcut without any proper foundation, so grievance and resentment would slowly accumulate in his body over time due to the wayward method. In fact, any tiny advancement in his spiritual power right now would crush every vein in his body, so he dared not take the risk. Shinjuli and his wife were both immortals of the highest rank, which was the 9th level for now. As for Yun Yanli, he was only at the 1st level of the same bracket, so his standards greatly differed from theirs. He could not even fight Ning Xiuama, let alone Shinjuli. However, The situation would be different once he possessed the Pearl of the Kuan. The pearl could erase all of the resentment that he carried through his dark practices, leaving him only with the purest source of spiritual power in his body. Therefore, he was determined to get the pearl. He was suddenly not so keen about killing Di Fui, and used all of his power to fight with Kuan Shui. Every strike launched was deadly, as he was hoping that he could kill the Kuan and retrieve the pearl he desired. Although Kuan Shui was a mythological beast, his spiritual power was only at the level of a golden immortal, which was obviously no match to Yun Yanli, who had completely lost his mind. About 30 moves later, he was utterly defeated by Yun Yanli. There were significant injuries all over his body at this point. Kuan Shui was no longer able to fight. However, he still had a few tricks up his sleeve, which he had not utilized. His first thought was to shrink to the size of an atomic particle and escape. However, the spell did not quite work the way he intended, as his body did not shrink to the size that he wished. Instead, he only managed to reduce his size by half and turned into the size of a toddler. Astonished, he could hear Yun Yanli mocking him. "I know everything about the Kuan and have come prepared for all the ways to capture one. Kuan Yunjan, accept your defeat and give me the pearl now. If you cooperate, I may consider keeping your dead body intact. Otherwise, I will shatter it into pieces." He raised his hand, and another streak of golden light could be seen flashing towards Kuan Shui. This time, he was not simply creating a net. He aimed to kill. A net was launched toward Kuan Shui, but it was filled with enchanted needles that would penetrate his skin and poison his body. Judging from the ruthless attacks from Yun Yanli, the poison would probably kill Kuan Shui immediately. The net was enormous, and there was no time for the creature to escape in his current condition. However, in the nick of time, a green figure flashed before his eyes right before the net touched him. The figure seemed to have pulled the mythological creature away. Swoosh! After a brief interruption, Kuan Shui disappeared into thin air. The empty venomous net fell from the sky. Yun Yanli was obviously furious that his attempt to tame a mythological creature ended up futile. The green figure was actually Gu Shijio. He did not expect her to show up just in time to save Di Fui's subordinate. He took a deep breath to calm his explosive rage. If she was here, Di Fui must be nearby too. If he could find her, he could find Di Fui as well. With a swift turn, he began his search by tracing her aura. Gu Shijio flew as quickly as she could without stopping. After about a dozen teleportations, Gu Shijio brought Kuan Shui into a mountain covered by a dense forest. Among the greens, a stream twined across the valleys. Along the fertile banks were some natural boulders that stood against the current, forming a natural array formation. Gu Shijio quickly escaped into the array formation with her teleportation skill. She took a few quick turns between the boulders and ventured through every gap that they could fit. All Kuan Shui could see were stones flashing by like a dazzling light. Shortly after, Gu Shijio finally stopped to observe the creature's shrunken body. "Are you all right?" Kuan Shui quickly withdrew his hand from hers and bowed to her. "Miss Gu, a pleasure to see you." He looked around and was confused. "Where is the Devil King?" At this moment, the creature had the face of an adult but with the body of a toddler. It was not a pleasant sight by any means. Even Gu Shijio felt that it was rather weird. She was actually present when the creature flirted with Yun Yanli. He seemed to enjoy their brief encounter, and was able to irritate Yun Yanli. However, his disproportionate body made him look rather odd now. "He is safe now," Gu Shijio only answered briefly. The fact that Di Fui had turned into a jade statue had to be kept confidential. It was easy for Gu Shijio to conceal the truth as she did not need to lie. Di Fui was indeed safe. Gu Shijio had placed him safely in a secret cave, a place where Yun Yanli could never get close. After Di Fui was turned into a jade statue last night, she had immediately contacted Guardians Jin and Hua to blow up Yun Yanli's residence, thus revealing the starry formation that no longer bore the same look. While utilizing an invisibility spell, she carried Di Fui's statue in the air, and pretended to be a celestial being that had just descended from above to serve as a savior to the people of Lugua City. Then she left swiftly via teleportation. Gu Shizhou had managed to escape from Legua City reasonably easily, because the young palace master had to deal with the chaos that she left behind. Guardian Hua had the carriage ready, so they quickly embarked on their secret journey back to the Devil Kingdom. Legua City was tens of thousands of miles away from the Devil Kingdom. Furthermore, it was safe to assume that Yun Yanli had set up many obstacles along the way. So Gu Shizhou had to keep a lookout the entire journey. To keep control over all the cities, Yun Yanli had some of his men traveling from city to city to inform one another about the latest affairs. The men also collected information to disseminate back to their leader. Therefore, Gu Shizhou needed to think out of the box to keep her team under the radar. She specifically asked Guardian Hua to get her a carriage that looked similar to what the young palace master's men would use. In the end, they decided to steal one of the wagons that belonged to the young palace master. Gu Shizhou had to kill the men to seize the vehicle as a safety precaution. Guardian Hua took the disguise of one of the men that were dead, while Guardian Jin pretended to be the coachman. As a precautionary measure, Gu Shizhou took the form of a male attendant. As for Di Fui, he was still a jade statue that sat quietly in the carriage. Along the way, they had encountered several stops but were able to pass the security checks easily due to their perfect disguises. Guardian Hua had all the necessary travel permits with him, and knew exactly where the checkpoints would be, and when the people would change shifts. Hence, none of the inspections managed to pick up anything suspicious. The entire time, the two guardians were unaware that the jade statue was actually Di Fui. What Gu Shizhou told them was that the Devil King had requested for the jade statue to be transported safely back to the Devil Kingdom. It was the most critical task, and failure was not an option. Both men agreed without further questions. To prevent any suspicions from the two guardians, Gu Shizhou had requested for them to stay outside the carriage for most of the journey. Guardian Hua hardly spent any time in the wagon and would mostly stay outside with Guardian Jin, who was their coachman. He would only hide in the carriage whenever they were crossing the border checks. Gu Shizhou was eager to keep the matter private as she was concerned that any unnecessary disruption would make Di Fui's situation worsen. In fact, she tried not to disturb him either, but would occasionally check his pulse to see if his vitals were returning. Unfortunately, she was disappointed every time that she checked. There were spies from the Devil Kingdom in every city in the Shura world. They would send news to Gu Zijia's team from time to time. Guardian Jin would be the first to be notified. He would then pass the message on to Gu Shizhou. Even while traveling in the carriage away from Legua City, she was still able to know what was happening in the city. She knew that Yun Yanli had returned. Upon learning this, she immediately asked Guardian Hua to turn around and race towards the mountainside. It would seem that Gu Shizhou did not spend the past year traveling in the outside world for nothing. A year filled with travel was enough to get her familiar with many geographical features of the different places in the Shura world. She learned that there was a very hidden cave in the mountain, so she decided to keep the jade statue in the cave. Guardians Jin and Hua were asked to keep the statue safe in the cave and wait for her instructions. That was the time when Kuan Shui called. She immediately left the mountain using her teleportation technique. To be safe, she put a few paper dolls on the back of a few beasts and made them run around. This was merely a way to confuse Yun Yanli if he chose to go after her. She then went to another valley that was not too far away. The valley was rather empty, aside from the numerous boulders that were present. These boulders were fairly large, and seemed to have already formed a unique array. She then called Kuan Shui and asked him to guide Yun Yanli towards the valley. Gu Shizhou was able to predict many things that had happened. However, she was not prepared to see Kuan Zui's body shrink this much. When they were finally hidden away in the stone array, Gu Shizhou finally had the time to take a proper look at him and was shocked. Gu Shizhou asked Kuan Shui, "Are you able to return to your original form?" She had no issues against children. However, Kuan Shui was still bearing the face of an adult, but had the body of a 7 or 8-year-old kid. Additionally, he looked somewhat like a hybrid between a man and a woman. Nonetheless, he was still somewhat cute. Kuan Shui was severely injured at that time. It was already a miracle that he was still able to maintain his human figure despite his condition. Upon hearing Gu Zijia's request, he answered hesitantly, "Yes." Instantly he abandoned his human-like form and turned into an enormous fish. The fish was gold in color but bore the body of a whale and the head of a dolphin. It also had scarlet fins that were gently fluttering in the breeze. Its beautiful double eyelids further emphasized its big round eyes. Every time it winked, its thick and curled lashes coming together like two pairs of waving fans. The fish supported itself upright with its fins. Like this. It tried hard to look at Guzijia's expression. Kuan Shui knew that it looked more adorable in this form rather than that of a toddler. In fact, what Gu Shijio meant was for Kuan Shui to look like an adult again. Due to its cuteness, she tried hard to suppress her urge to pet the fish. This is your original form? The fish winked at Gu Shijio and responded proudly. Well, this is more or less how I look, except for the fact that I am a bit smaller than my actual size. My original size could eclipse a mountain. It was already thousands of times smaller than its actual size. Gu Shijio suddenly recalled a phrase that she read a long time ago. In the north of the underworld, there is a fish, known as the Kuan, with an enormous body that stretches across thousands of miles. There was even an exaggeration for comic effect that went, "A small pot is not enough to contain the massive Kuan. It has such great fins that one would need 2 barbecue racks to support the fish." Jokes aside, she never knew that the Kun's original form would be so beautiful. It looked more impressive than any other fish. Gu Shijio was fond of grilled fish, and had consumed many types of exotic fish before. However, this fish was not something that she could grill and eat. Kuan Shui noticed the unusual look in Gu Zijia's eyes, as if she was staring at her food. He quickly retreated. They had not met for long, so he barely knew anything about her. He only knew that she was the woman that Di Fui cared for. Hence, she was a woman that he could not mess with. The woman was also undeniably smart. So smart that he could not help but feel impressed by her quick-witted strategies. Didn't you say that Yin Yanli planned to capture you alive? Why was he fighting you so aggressively this time? Gu Shijio was perplexed by the nature of the battle. The fish was slouching on the ground while listening. Its fins fanned in a casual manner, which made it look relaxed. The trashy man was no longer interested in my beauty. He wanted the pearl inside me. Gu Shijio was speechless. However, she also knew that Yin Yanli was never interested in beauty. While clearing his throat, Kuan Shui tried to think of a way to move past his awkward remark. The fish turned around and said with a sneer, "It seemed like he has always wanted the Kuan pearl. He seems to know a lot about the nature of my species. Otherwise, the man would not have cast a specialized spell that could prevent any Kuan from shrinking extensively." Gu Shijio agreed with a firm nod. Are there many Kuns in the world? She drew this hypothesis from Kuan Zui's statement. Kuan Shui briefly replied, "There will not be any mythological beasts like me in the Shura world where everything is scarce. I am from another world. I had traveled here by accident." A glimpse of hope shone in Gu Zijia's eyes. "You traveled here? Does that mean you can actually leave this place? How? Is there any gate that we can use?" She would prefer to take Di Fui out of the Shura world if there were any way to do so. The two would return someday to fight Yin Yanli when Di Fui was better. Kuan Shui was speechless. He coughed awkwardly to buy some time for his response. "About that, I did travel here, but I am stuck here for the time being. I cannot leave before the right time comes for me to leave." In fact, he was only here by accident. Otherwise, a proud mythological beast like him would not have wasted years in such a lousy place. He had been trying to escape for years, and during a battle with Di Fui, he had befriended the man, and even became his follower. Di Fui had promised to help him leave the Shura world one day. That was a private agreement between the two parties, so Kuan Shui was not ready to share the secret with Gu Shijio. Therefore, he had to give her an equivocal reply. Nonetheless, Gu Shijio was smart enough to figure it out. "You have come here by accident and failed to find a way out, haven't you?" Kuan Shui did not know what to say. The lady had obviously figured it out. In a desperate attempt to keep the discussion from going further, he had to change the topic. "A Kuan always harbors bitter resentment towards anyone who has done us wrong, and will seek revenge even for the smallest grievance. We are united and will strive to help one another when any of us is in trouble. I will make Yunyanli pay for what he has done to me. Someday, I will skin him and tear all of his muscles apart. Perhaps, I will even leave his skin to dry so that I can enjoy some bacon. Gu Shijio had mixed feelings as she heard such an eerie remark coming out of the mouth of an utterly adorable fish. After a brief moment, she recalled the clothing that she had in her storage bag, which was made from the skin of a koan. She could not remember where the clothing came from, but she knew that she could not let Koan Shui see it. She took a look at the golden skin on Koan Zui's body, then thought about the Kuanping skin that she owned in charming blue. Are all of you golden in color? She tried to find out more. Perhaps the dress that she had was not made from the skin of an actual koan. The fish shook its head in disapproval. Not necessarily. It largely depends on where we come from. It is just like how humans in different parts of the world have different clans that look somewhat different. However, the golden color skin tone is the most beautiful of all. The skin of a koan is a magical protective layer that comes in striking colors. Many great women who had reached the level of a great deity have always wanted to skin us to make beautiful clothes for themselves, but they would usually wind up dead and being skinned instead. Trembling, Gu Shijio decided to push the dress to the deepest part of her storage bag. Are you really so powerful? How can you kill a great deity? She was dubious over the Kun's remarks. Absolutely. Each koan is born with an epitome of spiritual power. We can usually achieve the level of a great deity within 1,000 years, Koan Shui proudly said. Gu Shijio tried to observe the fish and see if she could draw any clues. In that case, are you still a young koan? The fish's adorable appearance suddenly made sense. I was already a great deity in the place where I used to be. There is something strange about the Shura world, though. Ever since I came here, my spiritual power has been depleting tremendously. The mythological beast only had the power of a golden immortal right now, which was certainly not a match for Yunyanli. I am already an adult, Koan Shui concluded. I am even eligible for marriage. Gu Shijio could not help but sympathize with the misfortune of the grown-up fish. You are the only koan in the Shura world, aren't you? Therefore, you can only marry someone when you are finally out of this place. Koan Shui shook his fins and said, I do not necessarily have to marry my own species. After all, the same sea cannot contain two Kuns. One careless swipe can easily result in tsunamis. Gu Shijio was astonished by Koan Zui's most recent remark. As she silently contemplated, the creature seemed to be ready to say something to Gu Shijio. Feeling that his massive body would make it inconvenient for him to move around, he asked, Miss Gu, may I return to my human form? Of course. A handsome man immediately replaced the adorable fish. The man took a peek outside and remarked, Yunyanli is not even here yet. They were in the stone array for about half an hour. The mythological beast had roughly calculated Yunyanli's speed and reckoned that he should be here by now. However, the entire place was still in its usual serenity. Gu Shijio took a look for herself and calmly said, He is already here and has been listening to our conversation for 2 minutes. Koan Shui said nothing more. Behind a large boulder on the outskirts of the formation, Yunyanli heard his name being called out. Gu Shijio did not make the formation soundproof, so if anyone paid attention, they could easily hear any discussions even if they were situated outside the formation. Since Gu Shijio was very familiar with this array, she could tell when Yunyanli had arrived. Yunyanli wanted to quickly break into the formation at once, but stopped to listen to the conversation between Gu Shijio and Koan Shui. He hid himself using an invisibility spell, and tried to get more information first before making a move. In the end, all that he heard were useless pieces of information on how the fish planned to skin him, and that the fish was a well-grown koan that was looking for a lover. Yunyanli was prepared to stay hidden a little longer, but Gu Shijio had exposed his presence to Koan Shui. Koan Shui teased, It looks like Governor Yin is a coward. He has to hide himself despite his power. Yunyanli, you are just playing hard to get, aren't you? Are you shy to face me? Or are you too afraid to face us? Yunyanli was completely annoyed. Apart from retrieving the pearl, he swore to skin Koan Shui and shred his body into pieces. Since they knew that he was here, Yun Yanli no longer had any reason to hide. Kuan Yunjan, I am coming for you. If I fail to skin you, I will change my name. Kuan Shui laughed out loud. You can use mine. If you marry me, you can even have my surname as well. Gu Shijiu burst out laughing at that last remark. Yun Yanli was a straight man, and preferred to be direct when handling any matters. Gu Shijiu knew him very well. Hence, his encounter with this wayward Kuan had been a painful exchange for the proud man. Bewildered, she started wondering if he could be homosexual. Yun Yanli decided to shut his mouth. Any further mockery would drive him crazy. All he wanted was to kill Kuan Shui and skip all this useless talk. From the outside, Yun Yanli could not see anything that happened between Gu Shijiu and the mythological beast. He could only hear their voices. He took a look at the stone array, and thought that it was merely an ordinary array formation. Being one of the strongest beings in the Shura world, he did not see the need to take any precautions and boldly ventured into the unknown. However, as soon as he stepped past a certain point, everything around him suddenly changed dramatically. All the stones disappeared, and he found himself in a grand palace with glittering articles of gold and glamour everywhere. There was a sea of clouds outside, and a garden with magnificent flowers. Majestically carved pillars with jade inlays scattered the garden. This was his home in the upper bound. Not far from him was Lingxiao Hall. A couple could be seen embracing at the door. They were his parents, the previous celestial emperor and empress. Overwhelmed, Yun Yanli quickly paced towards the couple and kneeled before them. Father, mother, you are both alive. The celestial emperor helped him up. Lier Yun Yanli, you may rise. Chapter 2497. Making a fool of each other. Although he was not the crown prince, his parents never treated him differently. When Yun Yanli was severely injured as a result of a catastrophe he experienced, he went into a coma for 10 days and 10 nights. For the whole time his parents never left his side. He could clearly remember the happy tears they cried the moment his eyes opened. From then on, he made a promise to guard heaven with all that he could. Even though he was not the crown prince that would one day succeed his father's kingdom, he tried his best to cultivate and to become a stronger man day by day. Eventually, he became the admiral in heaven who ran the entire fleet of 10,000 divine troops. He had become his father's proudest son, and a leader that could not be taken lightly. Never had he thought that one day he would fall and become trapped in the Shura world, a place that was devoid of any vitality. He struggled for a long time but was finally able to leave. However, upon returning to heaven, he realized that everything had changed. Heaven had fallen into the hands of another emperor, and his parents were missing. He never gave up on the search for his parents, for he never believed that they were dead. Nonetheless, he could never find them. The lack of closure and obsession to find his parents slowly consumed him. To his surprise, he was able to see his parents again this time. All of a sudden, he was completely overwhelmed with nostalgia. Warm tears of excitement filled his eyes as soon as he kneeled before them. It was only his introverted nature that had stopped him from giving them a tight hug. When his dad had offered to help him up, everything felt so surreal to Yun Yanli. He wanted to stand but was suddenly perplexed. The celestial emperor's hard, cold hand had forcibly pressed down on him with tremendous pressure. Something did not feel right, and Yun Yanli then realized that he was in an illusion. With that knowledge in mind, he immediately launched his first strike. The celestial emperor was pushed across the air, and a loud crashing sound ensued seconds later. The figure of his father was shattered into tiny pieces after the great collision. Stunned in disbelief, Yun Yanli watched as the grand palace disappeared instantaneously, along with his parents. He was still standing in the midst of the stone array, and noticed that a massive stone was shattered into pieces. Yun Yanli's expression turned pale. Helplessly, his furious eyes turned towards the center of the array formation. Gu Shijiu, I have never mistreated you. How could you do this to me? It pained him to have to speak this fact. She had used the array formation to uncover a wound that he had been hiding in the dim recesses of his mind. He would not be surprised if she challenged him in a physical fight, but he certainly had not expected her to use this dirty trick. Gu Shijiu was equally surprised by the turn of events. The most powerful thing about the array formation was its ability to uncover one's strongest obsession and use it against them. It invited and trapped its prey by appearing to fulfill their deepest desires. It would usually distract the victim and lock them up in the array. Although Gu Shizhou and Kuan Shui could not see the exact illusion that he was experiencing, they could still observe his reaction. Gu Shizhou had always thought that power was Yin Yanli's biggest obsession. Surprisingly, it turned out that his parents were the ones he truly cared about. A sudden sense of guilt took her over by the sudden realization, and her heart momentarily ached for him. Despite being a clone, she had once experienced the love of being in a family. It did not last long, but the love and warmth that she received from her parents stayed with her. She looked at Kuan Shui and saw him casually leaning against a boulder with his chin cupped in his hands. Quietly, he was observing Yin Yanli. He seemed to have caught her curious eyes and answered her without even looking at her. "Stop looking at me. My species is born to be alone. Our parents send us away at birth to run our own course. I do not even know what my parents look like. I also do not know how it feels to be loved by a family. Therefore, I cannot resonate with him." He shook his head and added, "I thought you were his biggest obsession. What a surprise." Gu Shizhou looked at him half smilingly and said, "How could you think that I would be his obsession? Perhaps I should ask your master about it when we see him." Chapter 2498. Making a fool of each other. Too panicked, Kuan Shui quickly got up and apologized. "Please don't. Miss Gu, please excuse my ignorance. I take back my words." Kuan Shui was no longer standing in a position of ease. "Miss Gu, how long can you keep him trapped in the array?" Gu Shizhou made a guess. "Perhaps a day." Kuan Shui was delighted by the response. "Should we take this opportunity to escape? I have to stay behind to support the array. Otherwise, the formation cannot even keep him trapped for an hour." Gu Shizhou crushed his hope for an escape. However, what made him curious was why they even wait for Yin Yanli to arrive in the first place. Kuan Shui assessed the situation and made a guess. "Did you ask Guardians Jin and Hua to send the Devil King back while we keep Yin Yanli here?" "Yes, we are staying behind to buy them time. It will be enough if we keep Yin Yanli here for a day." "Where are they now?" Kuan Shui seemed relieved. Hesitantly, Gu Shizhou answered, "They should be at Fengping City by now. We have to do our best and keep Yin Yanli here. As you know, Yin Yanli is the only man who can actually stop them." "Great. We shall keep him here as long as we can." Both of them were communicating privately via their directed audio spells. Under normal circumstances, no one could hear what they said. However, Yin Yanli was not an ordinary man. His spiritual power had surpassed theirs, and overhearing directed audio messages was nothing for him. After a moment of deep, reflective thought, he smiled as he swept his eyes across the array formation. He suspected that as long as he stayed still, the array formation would not do him any harm. It would probably be difficult for him to move further into the center of the array, but exiting the formation should not be a challenge. He laughed out loud as he said, "Shizhou, although you have done me wrong, I am still reluctant to make things difficult for you. If you insist on keeping the fish, fine. I shall let both of you go this time." He then turned and started rushing out of the array. However, what he did not expect was that leaving the array formation was just as difficult as coming in. He took one step in the opposite direction, and was immediately trapped into another illusion. His parents appeared right before his eyes again. Luckily, he was prepared this time. He smacked his father, and was finally able to break free from the illusion. Gu Shizhou seemed to have noticed that he had figured out the way to escape the illusions. She quickly tried to distract him. "Yin Yanli, we are right here. Come for us if you dare." Swiftly, she leaped and teleported right in front of Yin Yanli to block his path. Yin Yanli locked his gaze on her face. He seemed to be conflicted for a moment. "Very well then, Gu Shizhou. You will have to come with me," he said with a smile. Gu Shizhou was not in the mood for a fight. Instead, she took a few steps back and slowly approached the array formation. Yin Yanli was eager to catch her, but still could not gather the courage to make any deadly moves. Her spiritual power was no match to his, but her quick wits were nothing short of his tactical moves. She moved around constantly to make things difficult for him. Yun Yanli knew that he had to be ruthless if he really wanted to catch her. All of a sudden, Gu Shijiu suddenly tripped and fell into the array formation herself. Yun Yanli smiled evilly. He already knew that she was going to play weak to lure him into the array formation. It seemed that he had already figured out her intention. Pretentiously, he leaped towards the array formation but stopped abruptly before the entrance. Chapter 2499. Making a Fool of Each Other 3. Gu Shijiu, I dare you to come after me. He mocked her. After that, he turned around and disappeared into thin air. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli had actually ordered his men to set up additional checkpoints between Legua City and the Devil Kingdom. However, he also knew that Di Fui and his escorts were too skilled to be caught. Yun Yanli was sure that they had masked their scents to keep themselves from being tracked. Without his help, his men would never be able to find Di Fui. He had to be there to do it himself. However, he wanted to obtain the Pearl of the Kuan first, but the fish was with Gu Shijiu inside the array formation. There was no way he could break through the formation to capture the two of them. And, even if he could do it in a day, Gu Shijiu would be gone before he even saw them. She would probably set up another array formation for him, to delay him again. Hence, going after her was not a wise plan, as it would take him another 3 to 5 days to break free from the endless cycles of cat and mouse games. Now that he was aware of Di Fui's whereabouts, the man should be his priority. With Di Fui in his hands, Gu Shijiu and Kuan Yunjian would definitely offer themselves before him. Having come to this realization, he chose to leave the place without wasting any time on the various illusions. He had also instructed his men to be vigilant and look out for Di Fui and his subordinates. Since Yun Yanli had left the place, Gu Shijiu could finally sit down and heave a sigh of relief. Kuan Shui looked at her, and was noticeably worried. Do you think he overheard what we talked about? Gu Shijiu answered with a firm nod. Kuan Zui's face darkened. He must be going after the Devil King. Gu Shijiu nodded again. Surely he is. Kuan Shui was even more worried now. We should go and stop him. He wanted to leave, but a sudden jolt kept him grounded. He then spat out a mouthful of blood. The creature's injuries were severe, and now was not the right time for him to enter into another fight. Gu Shijiu quickly reassured him, stay calm. They are not in Fengping City. Kuan Shui was speechless. He finally realized her strategy and acknowledged. What you said to me via the directed audios were actually meant for him. How did you know that he was going to eavesdrop on us? Gu Shijiu said with a smile. It was a bet. When she was still a mighty immortal, she could hear everything people said using their directed audio spells, so she bet that Yun Yanli could do the same. She was right. Astonished, Kuan Shui was trying to appreciate Gu Zijia's brilliant mind. With a thumb up, he paid her a compliment. You have used the illusion to trick him. What a great strategy. He looked around at the formation and sighed. What a waste for all your effort, though. It would be better if we could keep him grounded for a day. Gu Shijiu shook her head in disapproval. Actually, this array formation could only keep him grounded for 4 hours in the best-case scenario. If he decided to crush the array formation by force, it would not even last 2 hours. Kuan Shui did not know what to say. He had to think about the overall situation before he could comment. Miss Gu, you really are the perfect match for the Devil King. Gu Shijiu was obviously delighted to hear that. Very well said. We are certainly made for each other. Kuan Shui was speechless again. He never thought that the lady would be more thick-skinned than him. She was almost as good as Di Fui when it came to shameless self-praise. But one could not deny that the two of them were brilliant at devising detailed plans. Chapter 2500. Making a Fool of Each Other 4. Yun Yanli was rather unfortunate for having to deal with this quick-witted couple. Kuan Shui truly sympathized a little with Yun Yanli's misfortune. Gu Shijiu was looking at Kuan Shui fixedly. She asked, based on your current position, shouldn't you be trapped in an illusion? Do you know how to get yourself out? Kuan Shui shook his head and answered proudly. I was born to be an expert in solving array formations. Also, not many array formations can keep a koan grounded. Thus, he could walk away from the stone formation easily. When did a koan possess such a hidden talent? With a sigh, Gu Shijie was relieved that the koan was on her side and not with Yun Yanli. Otherwise, she would not even stand a chance. Quickly, she studied Koan Zui's body carefully. How bad is your injury? Can you fly? I am still fine. I can fly if I try. Are we going to meet up with the Devil King right away? Gu Shijie examined his pulse and realized that he was suffering from some form of internal injury. She offered him a few pills. Take these pills and meditate for an hour. Your internal injury should be able to heal a little. I will tell you more when you recover. Kuan Shui did not go against her wishes. He consumed the pills at once and started meditating. Gu Shijie decided to follow him and meditated too. She needed to make sure that she was ready for the next battle. An hour later, Kuan Shui opened his eyes and noticed that his injury had indeed healed a little. He felt ready to fly. Kuan Shui thought that Gu Shijie would take him to meet with Di Fui right away. Instead, she asked him to take her to Fengping City to have a look. Kuan Shui was now wondering if Di Fui was really hiding somewhere in Fengping City. Gu Shijie noticed his skepticism and explained with a sigh. Yun Yanli is a prudent man, so we should keep the show going to prevent him from getting suspicious. Also, I do have some matters to attend to in Fengping City. Without wasting any time, Kuan Shui transformed into a giant bird and soared into the sky. Fengping City was about 5,000 miles away. Even in the form of a bird, Kuan Shui would still need 2 hours to get there. As soon as they left, a man emerged from the bushes. The man watched as the giant bird flew away and reported, "Master, both of them have just left. From the direction that they traveled, I believe that they are heading towards Fengping City." On the other side of the call, Yun Yanli slowly kept away his directed audio spell as soon as he received the news. Utterly convinced, he began to travel as fast as he could. He did not turn around to catch Gu Shijie and Kuan Shui, for one of them could fly with great speed, and the other could teleport. It would be futile to chase after them. He should focus on Di Fui instead. Yun Yanli thought that Di Fui would be an easy target, so he activated his tracking spell. Upon arriving at Fengping City, his tracking spell had clearly shown no results of Di Fui. Determined, he continued to search every corner of the city painstakingly. Just when he thought that it must have been another one of Gu Zijie's tricks, he suddenly caught a tiny trace of Di Fui's scent. He quickly traced the scent, but found a donkey instead. Needless to say, Di Fui must be playing a game with him, too, in order to mislead him. Enraged, Yun Yanli immediately burst into anger. However, his search was not entirely in vain, as he knew that Di Fui could not be too far away. Therefore, he continued searching through the entire place tirelessly. After a long day, he had not found Di Fui but did encounter a tiger, a wolf, an eagle, and a leopard. In fact, he had found many things except the person he really wanted, Di Fui. All of his attempts had been in vain, and he finally realized that he was fooled again. Based on his past experiences, he would even guess that Di Fui was never in Fengping City. Gu Shijie and the Kuan had tricked him into a frantic search. He took a deep breath and decided that he would not chase Di Fui endlessly. Di Fui would return to the Devil Kingdom, sooner or later, and there was only one way in, which was located at the Black Desert in Sueya City. He would send his troops there to wait for the right opportunity. In the next 8 days, he would secure the entrance with the tightest security. Anyone who wished to enter the Devil Kingdom would be apprehended. Furthermore, the blood rain would fall again in 8 days. Di Fui and Gu Shijie will definitely need to hide in one of the 9 cities if they are not able to enter the Devil Kingdom in time. Therefore, Yun Yanli immediately contacted all the governors in the different cities to strengthen their security. All members of the troop must travel in a group of 20 and above. Alarms should be sounded at once if something seems suspicious. All the governors had to take serious precautions to prevent Gu Zijie and her men from attacking any lone troops, and then stealing the person's disguise. More sentries were posted to interrogate and examine all passers-by at every junction, whether alone or in groups. At this point, Yun Yanli was willing to kill thousands of Ophi's people just to make sure that Gu Shijie and her gang did not slip through his fingers. He had his men scattered in every corner of the Shura world. It was only a matter of time before Di Fui fell into his trap. Everything was well arranged and in place. Yun Yanli had an evil grin on his face as he reflected on the concrete plan he devised. He did not believe that Di Fui and Gu Shijie could escape this time. The first day passed rather quietly. 3 days later, everything still seemed to be the same. 5 days had passed, and nothing happened either. But finally, the 7th day was upon them. Yun Yanli had grown anxious all these days. He was easily agitated, so all of his followers dared not get close to him. Instead, they tried their best to find what he wanted. To their dismay, Di Fui and Gu Shijie seemed to have vanished without a trace. In the very end, Yun Yanli finally thought of the ultimate move to make Gu Shijie surrender herself voluntarily, which was to abuse her people and use them as bait. He had planned to place her people under arrest for creating disorder in the society. However, as soon as the warrant went out, the young palace master immediately came back with a report that all of her people had disappeared 7 days ago. The disappearance happened the day when the so-called celestial being made an appearance. The streets were chaotic that night, so the young palace master and her men busy trying to return the order to the city. She received a report that night that many common people had left the city. Gu Zijie's people were among those runaways. As the frantic search for Di Fui had fairly occupied the young palace master, she hardly paid any attention to the missing commoners. After all, she never truly cared about them. However, upon receiving Yun Yanli's order, she sent out her men to find Gu Zijie's people, only to realize that they were all gone. Yun Yanli was obviously irritated by the report. He raised his hand and gave the young palace master a resounding slap on the face. "Why didn't you tell me about such a serious matter?" The young palace master kneeled quietly without saying anything. With a sigh, Yun Yanli decided to leave. "Bring your men. Meet me at Qingfeng Mountain, 200 miles east of Luohua City." He finally knew where Di Fui was hiding. They must be hiding in the valley of Qingfeng Mountain. It was where Gu Shijie was trapped before. Gu Shijie was present with the clan leader, who had brought the villagers back to the place where they had once hated so much. That night, Gu Shijie had made direct contact with the clan leader to inform him about her current situation, and that Yun Yanli might someday use the people against her. The clan leader was an experienced man, so he immediately knew what to do. The villagers did not possess any great powers, but were solidly united. Moreover, they respected the clan leader's every decision. Hence, the clan leader had gathered all of the villagers late at night and seized the chance to run away from the city, while everything was in a mess. It was great timing for an escape, as the periodic blood of rain had just passed. After a year of struggling to survive in the city, most of the people had made good progress in their kung fu. Things were easier to handle as a group compared to before, for they were able to retreat and advance together on their journey to Qingfeng Valley. It took them only a night to cover the entire distance. When Yun Yanli finally ordered a complete shutdown in every city, they were already having a rest on the hills, right outside of the valley. At that very moment, Gu Shijie and Kuan Shui were dealing with Yun Yanli in the stone array while Guardian Jin and Guardian Hua were transporting Di Fui to Sueya City. Sueya City was located at one end of the Shura world while almost every troop was sent to Fengping City, which was in the completely opposite direction. Most of the security checks only focused on the carriages that traveled from Lugua City towards the Devil Kingdom. They barely paid any attention to the carriages that went in the opposite direction. Therefore, the two escorts were able to pass every security check with ease. As for Gu Shijie, after going around Fengping City to plant a few paper dolls with Di Fui's scent to misguide Yun Yanli, she quickly raced towards Qingfeng Mountain. While Yun Yanli was still looking for Di Fui, Gu Shijie was already with her people in Qingfeng Valley. A wizardry barrier had been set up to secure the border to prohibit anyone from leaving or entering the valley. Back in the days, it was Di Fui who managed to create a gate in the wizardry barrier by using a specific spell to lead the people out. When Di Fui performed the spell, Gu Shijie was present, so she remembered every step. After reuniting with her people, she tried to perform the same spell again a few times, but was not successful. On the last try, she managed to recreate the same gate and guided them into the valley. Everything in the valley remained just the same as they last saw it. Ferocious beasts still rampaged through the forest. However, the people were not who they were before. This time they came back stronger. Fighting the beasts was no longer as difficult as it was before. They wanted to run through the forest on foot, but Kuan Shui was not willing to go through the trouble, so he offered to glide through the dangers from above in the form of the golden winged Dupang while carrying everyone safely on his back. With just a few flaps, he managed to arrive at the cave. The villagers entered the cave one by one. It used to be the place where they were desperately trying to escape. However, it seemed like they had just arrived home again. Although the place was scarce of proper living conditions, they were able to live their lives together in solidarity and friendship. Unlike those early days in the city, they had always thought that they were able to lead a good and fulfilling life. However, contrary to their expectations, their life in the city had been a precarious one. They were treated like the scum of society, and nothing in the city was better than what they originally had in the valley. Thus, most of them were happy to be back in the valley. Everyone returned to their huts and started living their lives in the most basic form again. The turquoise rippling wavelets rolled gently against the shore, with sparkles of light gleaming on the surface of the lake that was as clear as a mirror. There was a white tent next to the lake. Its reflection could be seen in the clear water, creating a rather picturesque scene. Gu Shijie was sitting in front of the tent, with Di Fui's statue next to her. She was caught in a daze while staring at the statue blankly. Fui, when are you going to wake up? It has been 8 days. Gu Shijie had not anticipated that Di Fui would stay as a statue for so long. Her initial guess was that it would only take him a few hours to return. However, 8 days had passed, and the statue remained unchanged. She started to doubt whether he had really turned into the jade statue after all. Meanwhile, Yin Yanli was still after them. Yet, she was never afraid of him or worried that any of her plans might fail. It was the lifeless statue in front of her that had become her biggest concern. Could the statue remain in its state forever? Was he ever going to wake up? She stayed by his side every day and night. She would even place the statue on her bed, even when she was having a rest. She even wrapped her arms tightly around his waist whenever she slept. She would always hope for a miracle. She wanted to see his charming smile again. But every morning, she was faced with the same disappointment. The solid, lifeless statue remained just the same. She was not someone who was terribly keen on talking, but every time she was with the statue, she would blabber on about everything they had been through together. Doctors from the modern world would say that the power of words was able to wake coma patients from their prolonged state of unconsciousness. Gu Shijie had been putting this practice into full effect as she talked endlessly with Di Fui, even though he never responded. The firmament stone was awake, but it was unsure of Di Fui's condition. It knew that Di Fui used to turn himself into a jade statue before as a way to practice his kung fu, but the condition only lasted for 2 days. Unlike now, where it had clearly been more than 2 days. Had he become too obsessed with his meditation to the point of becoming a lifeless statue? At the thought of the possibility, the firmament stone offered to hook itself onto the wrist of the jade statue to try and examine his body. After all, it was made from the most precious form of jade. Naturally, it was the one that possessed the strongest sensitivity towards the jade statue. Even though it tried to help, the result was the same. There was not a single trace of the man. It tried to absorb the statue's spiritual power, but could hardly sense any trace of spiritual power. The only comforting outcome was that the statue was still warm, even though the temperature was much lower than that of a human body. It was unlike any common jade statues that were usually cold. Gu Shijie sat by the lake and looked at the sun for a moment. She then turned her attention to the statue. With a sigh, she took out the remaining purple cloud mushroom pills and observed them carefully on her palm. The pills were all round and shiny, glistening brightly under the sun. Feeling haunted, her lips tightened into a line as soon as she thought about how Di Fui was turned into a statue as a result of the pills. She had never taken them out of her bag until now. Desperately looking for some explanation, she could not help but pour the pills out of the bottle. If I consumed all of the pills, would I be turned into the same lifeless statue? She seemed to be engrossed by the idea. Master, please do not do anything silly. The firmament stone could read her mind and knew what she was thinking, so it quickly spoke to her. If you consume all of the pills, your body will explode, and you will be shattered to the tiniest bits. There will not be a single trace of you left behind. Do you think that these pills had somehow expired? Gu Shijiu asked the firmament stone. Otherwise, why would the pills have such a strong side effect? The firmament stone denied it. No, these pills will never expire. I shall try one, Gu Shijiu firmly said. She was eager to regain the power of a mighty immortal. When she was strong enough, Yin Yanli would no longer be a threat to her. She would not have to keep running away from him endlessly, with no place to call home. The firmament stone was not against the idea. Master, it is fine if you consume one pill. However, you will need to meditate in isolation for 3 days upon consumption. Should you ask Kuan Shui to guard the place? Before Gu Shijiu could say anything, a sudden loud noise distracted her. Gu Shijiu listened carefully and realized that the sound was coming from the eastern part of the wizardry barrier. Was Yin Yanli finally here? As soon as she thought of Yin Yanli, the directed audio spell at her waist suddenly flickered in bright lights. She picked up the call and recognized Guardian Jean's voice from another end. Miss Gu, there are some movements outside. Yin Yanli will be here any time now. He must be attacking the exterior of the wizardry barrier. Gu Shijiu let out a scornful smile. Yin Yanli had finally thought it out, but it was all too late. With the wizardry barrier in place, there was no way he could make his way into the valley. He could only stay on the outside of the barrier and fight a pointless siege. Within the wizardry barrier, the people could live self-contained lives. Aside from the mediocre food, there was nothing else to complain about. There was an abundant supply of spiritual stones as in Gu Zijia's storage space, so the villagers could continue to practice their kung fu for at least another 5 to 6 years. Ignore him. He will never make it through the barrier, she said nonchalantly. Guardian Jean was unaware of how powerful the wizardry barrier of Toatai actually was, so he was still worried. In a determined effort, he decided to guard the perimeters along with Guardian Hua. Their hearts skipped a beat whenever the wizardry barrier moved in a wave-like motion. They knew that Yin Yanli was a man of great power, and that he also had many talented men working in his troops. Could this thin wizardry barrier keep him and his men away? Guardian Hua was still troubled about the potential intrusion, so he directed another audio to Gu Shijiu. Miss Gu, there seems to be a violent attack from the outside. Would you like to come over and have a look? Without Difui, Gu Shijiu had automatically become their pillar of hope. If the wizardry barrier was going to collapse, they should prepare themselves for a fight. Although Gu Shijiu was not worried about the strength of the wizardry barrier, she still agreed to go with the guardians just to make them feel more at ease. She carried Difui's statue into the tent and placed him carefully on the bed. Conveniently, she put the remaining purple cloud mushroom pills in his firm clasp. Fui, I am going out to have a look and will be back in no time. Difui did not answer as usual. She lowered her body and planted a soft kiss on the lips of the statue before teleporting away. With a few quick moves, she was already at the edge of the wizardry barrier, and saw the guardians strolling around in a frenzied hurry. The wizardry barrier would sometimes be deformed by the strong external force, resulting in ripples that spread across the entire layer. Also, the barrier was entirely soundproof, so she could not tell how many people were actually present on the outside. They could only see that each attack would often result in a thunderous blow. It was obvious that the people on the outside were determined to fight their way into the barrier, and would change different spots to attack. The wizardry barrier, however, was as solid as a great iron armor. They did not damage the barrier at all, no matter how hard he tried. After taking a walk around the barrier, Gu Shijiu was even more relieved. She reassured the guardians that everything was good, and that they should head back for their practice instead, as there was really nothing to be worried about. However, both of them remained unconvinced. They offered to stay for a day and would only go back to the village when the sky was dark. Gu Shijiu could not talk them out of their stubbornness, so she let them be. Once again, she returned to her tent. Di Fui's statue was still there. Habitually, she started talking with him. Fui Yunyanli is here. Right now, he is attacking the wizardry barrier on a violent rampage. When do you think he will be aware of the overwhelming odds against him? She suddenly stopped talking as soon as she turned to face him. Her blank eyes were locked on his hands. The purple cloud mushrooms were gone. His hands were intertwined in a clasping manner, so Gu Shijiu was able to place the purple cloud mushrooms on his palm. However, all of them were now gone. Not a single one was left behind. Gu Shijiu paced around Di Fui and examined him carefully as she frantically searched for the pills. She somehow hoped that he had awakened, but her heart eventually sank into a hopeless abyss. Over the past few days, she had spent so much time with the statue that she could recognize every fine spot on its figure. She could immediately tell if the statue had moved even the tiniest bit. However, it would appear as though nothing had changed. It was exactly the same as before. Not even a strand of his hair was misplaced. In other words, he was still unconscious. Could the purple cloud mushrooms have been stolen? The white tent was obviously a forbidden place. Everyone here was well aware that no one else was allowed in the tent. Moreover, she had established a wizardry barrier around the tent that was so secure that even guardians Jin and Hua could not enter, let alone the common villagers. Something was not right. Kuan Shui was born to be an expert in breaking through wizardry barriers, but at that moment, he was resting in the lake that was right in front of the tent. Also, if any intruder were within 3 miles of him, even if the person were the size of a mosquito, he would have been able to sense it. Gu Shijiu walked out of the tent and called out for Kuan Shui. Soon a mini version of him emerged. He was quite reluctant to leave the water, so he only showed part of his head on the surface of the lake. Miss Gu, what is the matter? Did you see anyone going into my tent? No, I did not. There has not been anyone around for the past 4 hours. What is wrong? She trusted Kuan Shui, but if what he said were true, then where were the pills? Kuan Shui was still looking at her with his bright, curious eyes. Have you lost anything? He seemed to have made a smart guess. Gu Shijiu nodded briefly and went back into her tent. Kuan Shui stayed in the lake and pondered about the severity of the situation. He then decided to go to the shore and transformed into a pocket-sized bird. It would not have made sense if he had transformed into his original size. From outside of the tent, Kuan Shui asked, "What have you lost? Do you need my help?" Gu Shijiu considered his offer and thought that his good sense of smell could be useful in this situation. "Yes, please come in." Therefore, Kuan Shui walked in with his adorably cute figure with short legs. Gu Shijiu was pacing around hastily. She seemed to have flipped the bed over to look into every crack and every hole in the tent. The pills were round, so they could have fallen to the ground due to the tremors from the disturbances at the wizardry barrier. Perhaps they had rolled away. She looked up abruptly and saw the pocket-sized bird. "What are you doing?" She was bewildered. The bird took a look at the jade statue and answered calmly, "I am trying to avoid any misunderstanding." The tent should be the place where Gu Shijiu and Di Fui spent their nights together, so it was considered as a very private space. If Di Fui found out that another man had been in the tent, he would definitely give Kuan Shui a hard time. It would be better for him to go into the tent as a bird instead of a man. At this point, Gu Shijiu could not really care if he was a man or a bird. The only thing that concerned her was the pills. Gu Shijiu still had 1 purple cloud mushroom pill left, so she took it out and showed it to Kuan Shui. She told him that she was looking for this pill and needed his help. Kuan Shui knew immediately what the purple cloud mushroom was at first glance. Although he was unsure of the ingredients used to produce the pills, he could tell that it was a great supplement to increase one's spiritual power. No amount of money was worth the rarity of the pill. Losing the pill would be a great loss to anyone. Did you only lose 1 pill? Where do you think you misplaced it? Chapter 2506. Will it explode? No, I have lost at least a dozen pills. This is one of them. I put them in this tent, and they were still here before I left. However, when I came back, they were all missing. I was gone for less than an hour. Kuan Shui remained silent. Gu Shijio suspected that something had drilled out from the ground and stole it. Therefore, she tried to check the ground to see if there was any hole. Miss Gu, rest assured. If someone entered the tent, I would have picked it up. Kuan Zui's two wings pointed at each other in front of his chest as if pinching a spell. After a while, many fluffs were flying out from the tip of the wings to all corners of the tent. After a while, these fluffs all flew in the same direction and started hovering over the hand of the jade statue. The tip of the fluffs was all pointing in one direction. The hands of the jade. Kuan Shui remained silent. Did it come alive and take the pills away? Kuan Shui went around the jade a couple of times. He seemed to smell something and finally turned to look at Gu Shijio. The statue has consumed the pills. Gu Zijia's heart jumped. Really? It looks the same though. Kuan Shui looked at the jade statue again. There is no change in its appearance, but maybe it was activated by the pill's aura. Perhaps the jade statue has turned into spiritual jade. Kuan Shui looked like he wanted to break the jade statue and take a look inside it, so Gu Shijio had to keep him away from the jade statue. She suddenly reported that there was some danger at the wizardry barrier, and asked him to go there to have a look. Kuan Shui went out of the tent as instructed, and the moment he left, Gu Shijio looked at the hands of the statue and faintly felt that the color of his hands turned slightly red. Well, were the medicines absorbed by you? Gu Zijia's finger touched the hand of the jade statue as she asked. When she made contact with the statue, she was shocked. She could sense a faint spiritual power in the hands of the jade statue. She decided to grab the statue's hands, and could now feel that there was powerful energy inside of the statue. When it rushed to her fingers, she subconsciously withdrew her hand and quickly called the firmament stone. Little Tsong, can you check if the statue is full of spiritual power? The firmament stone flew down from her wrist, and wrapped itself around the wrist of the jade statue. After a while it fell off. Master, the power inside it is too strong. I can't stand it. When it was talking, the jade statue seemed to have trembled slightly, and there was a faint light on its body. It looked bizarre. It seemed that there was a flame burning from the inside of the jade statue. Master, will it explode? The firmament stone was stunned and looked at the jade statue, expecting it to explode from having too much spiritual power. Gu Zijia's facial expression changed. If the jade statue were to blow up, he would disappear forever. The fear of losing him certainly made Gu Shijio panicked. She bit her lips and rushed forward to hold the hands of the jade statue. She wanted to absorb some spiritual power from it, so that it would not explode. However, she realized that she was not able to absorb anything. It was strange because the last time Difui meditated, the firmament stone was able to absorb some spiritual power from him, but this time she could not. She could sense that the statue was full of power, but none of it seemed to be overflowing out of the statue. Chapter 2507. Master, slow down. Furthermore, the surging force generated by the spiritual power inside the statue made it difficult for anyone to even touch it. Gu Shijio found herself being repelled from the statue due to its power. It was as if she were electrocuted every time she touched it. Nonetheless, she did not give up. Regardless of the pain, she touched his hand again to try to absorb some of the power. The result was the same except that Gu Zijia's entire arm was in pain. The firmament quick shouted, Master, no. You can't. Your spiritual power is too low now. You will be hurt. Her trusted comrade estimated the strength of the force that the statue was emitting every time Gu Shijio touched it, and realized that it was equivalent to the attack of a golden immortal. Gu Zijia would be seriously injured if she continued. Her eyes were almost red by that point. But if he really disappeared, what was the point of living? At that point, the jade statue seemed to be tremoring at a higher frequency. Parts of the statue seemed to be falling off. Is he? Gu Shijio reached out her hands to catch any falling pieces. Even though some of them were as tiny as rice grains, Gu Zijia's eyes were sharp enough to see that these were the jade fragments of his body. Was he going to disappear forever? It was easy to tell how nervous and devastated Gu Shijie was just by the sound of her voice. The firmament stone was also panicked. It had a bad feeling about the situation, but did not dare to say anything. Fui, it is me. Don't resist. It is me. Gu Shijie could not help but rush forward and hug the statue tightly with both of her arms. Fui. If you dare to disappear again, I will. I will. What could she do? She could not think of anything that could use to threaten him at that moment. The fear was overwhelming. She did not want to be alone in this world anymore. She ignored the repelling force generated by the statue and smothered it with tears. The tears dripped down and fell on the neck of the jade statue. The jade statue was originally shaking, but after Gu Shijie hugged it, it seemed to have stopped. Even the repelling force seemed to have halted. Was the person in the jade statue finally controlling it? Although the effect seemed to have stopped, Gu Shijie's internal organs were dealt a severe blow from her earlier attempts. Nonetheless, she did not want to let go. She buried her face on its shoulder and said, I am waiting for you to come back. I am waiting for you to come back. You can't leave me again. The firmament stone also flew over and attached itself to Gu Shijie's wrist. It tried to communicate with her. Master, he will not die so easily. Please don't worry too much. This sentence did not have the comforting effect that was intended, as Gu Shijie thought it was only saying those words to try to comfort her. Hence she ignored it. Since the jade statue no longer trembled, Gu Shijie immediately pressed on both of her palms on it to try to absorb any excess spiritual power from it. Strangely, she managed to absorb some of the power. The surging spiritual power in the jade statue started to flow into Gu Shijie's body. The firmament stone was worried. Master, slow down. It did not draw any spiritual power from Fui this time, but just remained an onlooker. Absorbing spiritual power from Fui was an excruciating exercise, but she still insisted on continuing. Chapter 2508. A smile to show that he finally found a breakthrough. Gu Shijie figured that the more she absorbed the power from his body, the less likely an explosion would occur. All this time, she was so focused on saving Fui's life that she did not realize that the sky outside had begun to change. Ominous clouds seemed to have filled the sky. Yin Yanli, who was busy trying to tear down the wizardry barrier, also did not realize the change. He was getting deranged. He had come here with all the best warriors, he had to take them down. It only took a simple statement to convince them. This was a devil's lair, and it must be destroyed. He brought 10,000 soldiers, many of whom were masters at the level of a golden immortal and above. These people had been attacking the wizardry barrier around the valley for 3 to 4 hours now. It was as solid as gold. Yin Yanli was also a master of wizardry barriers, and his spiritual power was at the level of a great deity. He thought that there was no wizardry barrier in this world that he could not break, and did not expect to be stuck here for so long. Who set up this wizardry barrier? How could it be so powerful? How did Gu Shijie and her people get inside? Gu Shijie had once told him about this wizardry barrier before, though very briefly. She had said that it was complicated to break, and it was Fui who managed to find a way through. Yin Yanli had tried to ask more questions, but he failed to get any more information. Little did he know that this wizardry barrier would become a roadblock to stop him from his mission. All of a sudden, fireworks were issued in the distance. Yin Yanli recognized that the young palace master set it off. Apparently, she had met someone, and this was a signal to gather the people. He followed the fireworks and flew over immediately. On a hillside, he saw a green figure surrounded by the young palace master and the rest of his men. There was also a donkey standing with the green figure. It was Mr. Zhu from the Devil World, Gu Shijie's apprentice. Yin Yanli's eyes brightened, and the ends of his lips were curved upwards. It was a smile to show that he finally found a breakthrough. To be honest, Zhu Duking's skills were excellent, especially his ability to open the Rui door, which was superb. It was handy for escaping. He probably came because he heard that Gu Shijie was here. He did not expect to be seen by the young palace master, who had a pair of sharp eyes. The young palace master was highly intelligent and knew that Zhu Duqing was good at fleeing. Hence, She went after his donkey instead, who was busy looking for food. The donkey was certainly highly skilled as well. However, the young palace master knew how to tame the creature, so it was quickly shackled by the young palace master using a spiritual rope. Zhu Duqing cared about his donkey a lot, and he would never abandon it. That left him with no choice. When Yin Yanli arrived, he moved so fast that it looked as though he was teleporting. In a matter of seconds, he was right in front of Zhu Duqing with a net in his hand to capture Zhu Duqing. Gu Zijia's apprentice tried to struggle, but still could not get rid of the net. Yin Yanli was certainly very happy with his new prized possession. He smiled at him. "Mr. Zhu, how are you? It is good that you could make it." Zhu Duqing's handsome face looked outraged. "Yin Yanli, I did not expect you to be such a cruel person." Yin Yanli ignored him and took him to the front of the wizardry barrier. He then shouted, "Mr. Zhu from the devil world is in my hands. Di Fui, quickly ask your people to open the wizardry barrier, or I will kill him here." Chapter 2509. Catastrophe. Using his spiritual power, Yin Yanli was able to project his voice at least a few miles. He believed that anyone in the entire valley could hear it. However, he realized that there was still no movement inside the barrier. Needless to say, the wizardry barrier remained shut. Zhu Duqing sneered. "This wizardry barrier is probably soundproof. No matter how loud you scream, the people inside can't hear it. Even if they did, they wouldn't be threatened by you." Yin Yanli glared at Zhu Duqing. "Do you recognize this wizardry barrier?" "No, I don't recognize it." Yin Yanli sneered. "If you don't recognize it, how do you know that this wizardry barrier is soundproof?" Zhu Duqing kept his mouth shut and said nothing. "Tell me how to break this wizardry barrier." Zhu Duqing rolled his eyes and ignored the man. Yin Yanli smiled. "Mr. Zhu, since you don't know how to bend in a bad situation, I am sorry." Yin Yanli seemed to grip his palms, and the net suddenly tightened. Zhu Duqing felt as though bee stingers had pierced into his body, and his handsome face instantly turned red. He frowned and bit his lips, but still remained silent. "I didn't expect Mr. Zhu to have such a strong body." Yin Yanli sounded cold, and his gaze turned to the donkey as he smiled. His smile was enough to strike fear in the pet. The donkey seemed to have spurted a sneeze as a way of hinting to Yin Yanli not to provoke it. Yin Yanli simply chuckled at it. He then spoke to the young palace master. "Ming Dai, get some ingredients from this donkey." "Okay," answered the young palace master, and she immediately went to the front of the donkey. A serrated knife appeared at her fingertips as she gently stroked the buttocks of the donkey. "My knife can cut the toughest skin. The skin of this donkey is perfect. Let me peel it off to make soup. It must be delicious." The donkey was nervous and slammed its hoof on the ground. However, it could not struggle or move since it was tied up. It turned to look at its owner in the trapped net to ask for help. Zhu Duqing was angry. "If you are not happy with me, just come straight at me. Why would you want to torture a donkey? I advise you to drop this idea. I will not betray my master for this donkey." This donkey could understand the human language, so it was rather disappointed at what its master had said. Zhu Duqing looked at it apologetically, but did not utter a word. A soldier who was attacking the wizardry barrier suddenly shouted, "This wizardry barrier seems to have loosened." Yin Yanli was rather excited by what he heard. Zhu Duqing spoke to his donkey. "Don't scream." The donkey shut its mouth and looked at Zhu Duqing with suspicion. Yin Yanli laughed and told the young palace master, "Let's torture this donkey. Make it scream. The louder the better." The young palace master naturally agreed. Her familiarity with beasts helped her understand the sensitive points of each beast. Hence, she started by stabbing the stomach of the donkey. This donkey was hardly vulnerable, but the way the young palace master stabbed it was rather unique. The knife pierced through its epidermis with ease and penetrated its veins. The donkey trembled and sweated all over. It clenched its teeth but did not scream. The young palace master frowned. "Is this donkey a stubborn one?" Chapter 2510. Catastrophe 2. The young palace master proceeded to stab the donkey repeatedly in order to make it squeal. The serrated knife was stained with blood, but the donkey never screamed. It only looked at the young palace master disdainfully. Zhu Duking's face had turned red, and he continued to curse Yun Yanli and his subordinates. Yun Yanli ignored him and continued to order the young palace master. It seems like this donkey doesn't feel pain on its skin. Is it a male donkey? If that is the case, let's take away its penis. The donkey was furious as the young palace master immediately placed her knife near to the donkey's penis. For the first time, the donkey screamed out of fear. Its scream was deafening, and it was very different from that of an ordinary donkey. It sounded like a dragon, and it shocked everyone's ears. The whole valley echoed with its high-pitched shriek. The wizardry barrier suddenly appeared to tremor violently, and Yun Yanli took advantage of the situation by pounding against it with brute force. Along with a loud bang, a big hole emerged in the wizardry barrier. Yun Yanli laughed at his success, and asked his forces to make their way through quickly. His subordinates immediately attacked Guardians Jin and Hua, who were patrolling at the edge of the wizardry barrier. They were affected by the tremors at the barrier, and just as they got up, they were surrounded by Yun Yanli and his people. During the fight, Guardian Jin tried to contact Gu Shijie with a directed audio spell in order to warn her. However, at this critical moment, Gu Shijie did not answer her directed audio spell. Suddenly, a flash of lightning appeared in the sky, which lighted up the entire ground. Along with the lightning came a rumbling thunder that reverberated across the sky. Everyone was stunned and subconsciously raised their heads. Their facial expressions changed. There were many red clouds in the sky that appeared to be clumped together. Lightning that was accompanied by thunder could be seen and felt across the entire sky. This was the sign of a catastrophe about to happen. But who was going through the catastrophe? Being distracted by the happenings in the air, Yun Yanli did not immediately notice that there was a faint gold shadow that flashed about in the crowd. Guardian Jin, who was initially trapped in the encirclement of the crowd, instantly disappeared. What the hell? The young palace master was furious. This is definitely Gu Zigyi's work. However, just when she uttered this point, she recalled that her master loved Gu Shijie. Therefore, she should be careful with what she says. In the past, she was punished by Yun Yanli for cursing Gu Shijie. Yun Yanli said coldly, "It is not her. This is the Kuan. Quickly, chase after him." Gu Shijie did not expect to experience a catastrophe of this sort at this very moment. In a bid to save Di Fui, she desperately absorbed his spiritual power, but never expected thunder and lightning to strike above her head. If it were not for her responsiveness to teleport away in time, she and the jade statue would have been smashed. Even so, her tent had collapsed on impact. She immediately knew what was happening. It was her turn to experience a catastrophe. The thunder and lightning were simply a warning to her. Gu Shijie knew that she could not hide from it. Fortunately, she had experienced it before, so it should not be a big problem for her. Gu Zigyi's main concern was only for the jade statue. She wanted to make sure that nothing happened to Di Fui. As the catastrophe was for her, she decided to put Di Fui somewhere safe that was not near her. In the distance, a loud crashing sound could be heard. However, it did not seem to be from the catastrophe. Gu Zigyi's expression changed as she realized what had happened. Yun Yanli and his men must have broken through the wizardry barrier. It was only a matter of time before he and his men would be here. She did not have time to think about how the wizardry barrier was broken. She had to make sure that Di Fui was safe. So she took the jade statue and plunged into the lake. Upon returning to the shore, the jade statue was gone, and only Gu Shijie was present. She knew that she had to distance herself from the lake, but just as she had come up from the water, a bolt of lightning headed her way and seemed to cover her entire body. It also seemed to have lifted her in midair. Her clansmen, Guardian Jin, Guardian Hua, and Kuan Shui, along with Yun Yanli, had already entered the valley. Therefore 1,000 pairs of eyes witnessed the mind-blowing sight. Gu Shijie was being pulled into the sky by an enveloping circle of light as a lightning bolt struck her. Yun Yanli gripped his fingers to prepare to do something. He waved his sleeves to cast a spell but held back. He was certainly familiar with this kind of catastrophe and could easily help in this situation. However, something made him hesitate. With an expressionless face, he ordered his subordinates, "Go in and don't let anyone escape. If you can catch them alive, then let them live. Otherwise, kill them all." Since God had given him this rare good opportunity, he naturally had to grasp it. He should no longer show benevolence to this woman. Thousands of soldiers answered and rushed into the inside of the valley. It was chaotic. Although there were many fierce beasts in the valley, they could not stop these elites that had broken in. The soldiers killed the beasts so easily as though they were chopping vegetables. By chance, they had even killed the king of the beasts. Therefore, the remaining beasts fled in fear as Yun Yanli and his people marched straight into the valley. Although the entrance to the valley was hidden, Yun Yanli was an expert in mechanisms and easily found the way in. Finally, they had made their way into the hidden paradise. Gu Zijia's clan was no match for the masters that Yun Yanli had brought along with him. They were all caught almost instantly. Meanwhile, Gu Shijia was still busy facing a catastrophe in the sky and could not fly down to protect her people. Instead, she found herself seriously injured after being distracted by the need to protect the people that mattered to her. In the end, Kuan Shui knew that they had to make a run for it. He only managed to take Guardian Jing with him as he plunged into the lake and disappeared. Unfortunately, Guardian Hua was seized. Gu Shijio experienced 6 lightning strikes and had indeed become an immortal. However, due to obvious worries in her heart, she did not ascend. She merely fell from the sky. Yun Yanli rolled his sleeves up to catch her and hugged her in his arms. He looked at her and smiled. "Shijio, congratulations on your advancement. I am pleased." Gu Shijio was unable to stand at that moment, so naturally, she did not have the strength to push him away. She did not struggle and kept her eyes closed. Weakly she uttered, "Yun Yanli, I regret." "What do you regret?" "I regret that I used to treat you as a friend. You are not worth it." Yun Yanli's facial expression changed. He was stunned for a moment. After pondering for a moment, he smiled and said gently, "I don't regret it though. I don't regret knowing you. Shijio, we are a perfect couple. We are destined to be together. Otherwise, how could you fall to the Shuro world so coincidentally? Even you should be able to see that we are fated to be together." Chapter 25:12. Catastrophe 4. Gu Shijio sneered. "I believe this is fated. God sent me down here to expose your true face and to save the people of Shuro world." She could not continue because Yun Yanli had sealed her acupuncture point. The man sighed. "Shijio, although you are an immortal from the upper bound, you seem to have lost your mind after having it brainwashed by the Devil King. Poor thing." Sigh. When he was talking, Yun Yanli's subordinates had scoured the village and turned the entire place inside out. They all came back and reported they could not find Difui. Yun Yanli trusted his most loyal subordinates that he brought here with him. They would even miss a mouse, not to mention a human. The only place that they had not searched was the lake in front of them. He muttered, "Is he hiding in the lake?" Gu Shijio closed her eyes and did not react. The young palace master responded immediately, "Let me go down and see." Yun Yanli shook his head. "No, I will do it myself." Difui was too cunning. He was afraid that the young palace master would not recognize him if he used some sort of spell to conceal his identity. He had to do it himself. The young palace master stepped forward. "Master, will you hand her over to me?" Yun Yanli shook his head. "No." He looked at Gu Shijio in his arms and smiled. "This lake is good. Let's take a dip." He then brought her straight into the lake. The young palace master was speechless. She was certainly disappointed by what had happened and could only clench her fists under her sleeves. Although Gu Shijio was very seriously injured, she was excellent in the water and had just been promoted to an immortal. This lake naturally could not hurt her. Yun Yanli held her waist the entire time so that she did not have any chance to escape. Due to his power, Yun Yanli was able to walk around at the bottom of the lake. He cast his tracking spell, but it did not pick anything up. It appeared that Difui was not hiding at the bottom of the lake. But Difui was supposed to be together with Gu Shijio. How could he not be? Yin Yanli was slightly anxious. It was soundproof at the bottom of the lake, so he was naturally not afraid of Gu Shijio screaming down below. He released her acupuncture point and asked, "Where is Difui?" Gu Shijio closed her eyes and did not speak. She ignored him. "If you don't tell me, I will punish your clansmen to death one by one until you open your mouth." This time, Gu Shijio finally opened her mouth and said the three cold words, "Up to you." Yin Yanli was stunned. "Don't you care about them?" Gu Shijio sneered. "You should understand that they are not my clansmen. They were only my companions when I was in trouble. How good can our relationship be over such a short period? Do you think it worth me giving in to you?" Yin Yanli remained silent. Gu Shijio continued to speak. "I have done enough in the past 2 years. I don't owe them anything. If you want to kill them, just do it. You don't have to tell me." Yin Yanli looked at her for a long while. "You are not a cold-blooded person. Why do you have to act like you are? Do you think you can fool me?" Gu Shijio bit her lips and did not answer. Yin Yanli smiled. "If you really don't care about them, then I will order my people to kill all of them on the ground after I go to the shore. Anyway, I have told those subordinates that these people are demons from the devil world. No one will even think of keeping them alive." Gu Shijio closed her eyes. "Yin Yanli, I didn't expect you to be so stupid." Yin Yanli remained silent as he gritted his teeth curiously. "Why do you say so?" Chapter 25:13. "You are really infatuated with him," Gu Shijio sneered. "Why don't you think about it? If Difui was here and saw me experiencing a catastrophe, he will definitely be protecting me. Why wouldn't he show up?" Yin Yanli snorted. "Maybe he is paralyzed." Gu Shijio smiled with ridicule. "If this explanation makes you feel more comfortable, you can go ahead and comfort yourself." Yin Yanli remained silent. In fact, he also felt that this reason was far-fetched. The last time he saw Difui, the man still looked well. Although he suffered some injuries and his skills were not as good as before, there was no indication that he would be paralyzed. What's more, he had already rested for 7 to 8 days. If anything, he should be stronger than before. So he is not here. Yin Yanli seemed to understand what was going on. After all, this was the most reasonable explanation. Gu Shijio chuckled but did not speak. "Where is he? Do you think I will tell you?" "Gu Shijio, my patience is limited, even for you." Yin Yanli pinched a spell with his fingers, and a spear-like object appeared on its fingertips. "I will count to 3. If you don't tell me his whereabouts, I will immediately order the men on the shore to kill your friends and your clansmen." Gu Shijio remained silent. She pondered the situation, and after a while, she finally said coldly, "In fact, there is no harm for me to tell you. He has already returned to the devil world." "Nonsense. My people have been guarding the entrance to the devil kingdom for days. No one had entered." "Stupid. He naturally knew that you sent people to guard the entrance. Do you think he will just deliver himself to you? We knew that you would use my clansmen to force me out one day, and that you would bring your most elite squad. Do you think the soldiers that you left there could stop him?" Yin Yanli clenched his fist. He did bring all his elite troops with him, leaving not more than 8 people at the entrance to the Devil Kingdom. Those 8 people were certainly able to deal with an average person, but there was no way they could deal with Difui. "So, it turns out that you have thought of everything, deliberately attracting my people here, to pave the way for him to return to the devil world." Gu Shijio smiled. "Yes, you are really infatuated with him." "Of course. He is my husband. Who else would I be infatuated with?" Yin Yanli smiled slyly. "Gu Shijio, I didn't expect your taste to be so poor. It seems that a child managed to lure you away. Aren't you afraid that the people in the upper bound would make fun of you for it?" Gu Shijio slightly closed her eyes and answered indifferently, "I am following my heart. I am not concerned over any gossip." Yin Yanli suddenly laughed. "Really? That's good then." He then brought her straight to the shore. The young palace master and the rest of his subordinates were waiting for their next instruction. When they saw him returning empty-handed, They knew that he had not found Difui, so they did not dare to ask any further questions. Gu Shijio let out a sigh of relief. She had always been rigorous in her work and liked to have a backup plan. Over the past few days, she had set up a wizardry barrier at the bottom of the lake together with Kun Shui. This wizardry barrier was colorless and transparent to anyone looking at it from the outside. The barrier was actually set up for Gu Shijio to hide in if Yin Yanli ever managed to find a way past the wizardry barrier. It would also be a good place to hide Difuya's statue if anything ever happened. She certainly did not expect to experience a catastrophe at the same time that Yin Yanli broke into the valley. It made her a live target, and she knew that she could not hide. Therefore, before she experienced the catastrophe, she buried the jade statue into the wizardry barrier. Kun Shui went into the lake with Guardian Jin in the middle of the battle. He actually hid inside the wizardry barrier as well. Yin Yanli thought that the two persons had run away, so he did not chase after them. As long as Yin Yanli did not capture Difui, there was still hope for a comeback, no matter how badly things turned out. She was worried about his well-being, but she did not show it on her face. In fact, she kept her eyes closed most of the time, and just focused on healing her injuries. However, the cries of a donkey made her suddenly open her eyes. She did not see the donkey in the crowd, but she certainly recognized its voice. It was Zhu Duqing's donkey. Did that mean that Yin Yanli had captured Zhu Duqing? When she opened her eyes, Yin Yanli already knew what was going on in her mind. He waved his hand to signal the soldiers to spread out, revealing Zhu Duqing, who was trapped in a net as well as his donkey, which was tied up. The donkey had spent a few days with Gu Shijio before, and had grown fond of her. It had treated her as a friend, so seeing her definitely made it hopeful. It kept talking to Gu Shijio as though it was complaining about something. Zhu Duqing was very embarrassed and ordered the donkey, "Don't scream." He apologetically looked at Gu Shijio and said, "Master Shijio, I am sorry." Gu Shijio felt sorry for Zhu Duqing as well. If it were not for her, Mr. Zhu would be safe and sound in the devil world. She had abandoned him for Difui, which made her feel guilty about his current predicament. Initially, she thought that even if Yin Yanli caught him, the man would be kind to him. However, she did not expect him to be trapped in the torturous net while his donkey remained tied up. Gu Shijio turned to look at Yin Yanli, and then looked away. "Why have you kept him in a net?" Yin Yanli chuckled. "If you promise to marry me, then I will let him go." Gu Shijio was speechless. This guy was sick. Yin Yanli's eyes clearly showed his disappointment. However, a smile suddenly appeared on his face. "He is your precious apprentice. He would sacrifice anything for you. Although he had escaped from me before, he still worried about you and even spied on us. However, he was caught by me. Can you bear to watch him being tortured to death?" Gu Shijio did not speak. Yin Yanli then looked at Zhu Duqing. "Mr. Zhu, see for yourself. It seems that you are not important to her." Yin Yanli was very good at provoking people's relationships. In just a few words, he managed to turn the situation in his favor. However, Zhu Duqing was not a fool. He disdainfully replied, "You are just trying to provoke us. I don't buy it." Yin Yanli's facial expression changed very abruptly. He instructed the young palace master at his side, "Peel off the skin of this donkey." The donkey was raging. It never thought that it would be the one who got the bullet. How did it manage to get in between all these parties? The donkey screamed furiously. The scream was loud as a dragon and shook the stone houses in the distance, causing them to collapse. Even the surface of the lake was moving violently as if someone were boiling it. Everyone covered their ears and stepped back. "Don't scream. Bastard. Don't scream. Do you want to kill the people here?" Zhu Duqing cursed. Chapter 25:15. Let's go down and take a look. Yin Yanli had initially guessed that this donkey's screams were able to destroy the wizardry barrier. Looking at the expression of Zhu Duqing's face, he seemed to be more sure of himself that this donkey possessed some unique ability. Yin Yanli suddenly remembered that Kun Shui had jumped into the lake. He turned to look at the surface of the lake, and suddenly had an idea. A smile then appeared on his face. Perhaps there is a wizardry barrier in the lake. Gu Zijia's body went slightly stiff. Yun Yanli had nothing to lose, so he instructed, "Let's go down and take a look." He pulled Gu Shijia with him, and wanted to jump into the lake again. Boom! A vast waterspout blasted over the lake. A gold figure leaped into the air, and turned into a golden-winged bird. When its wings flapped, it rolled up a hurricane that blew the people off their feet. The golden-winged bird flew into the air, intending to escape. However, Yun Yanli's eyes were sharp, and he clearly saw that two people on the back of the golden-winged bird. Due to the large head of the golden-winged bird, the two people on its back were well hidden, making it difficult for anyone to see their faces. Even so, Yun Yanli's eyes were razor-sharp. He laughed merrily. There was indeed a weirdness in the lake. Let's capture them. Finally, he passed Gu Shijio to the young palace master. Look after her. If she runs away, I will peel off your skin myself. The young palace master promised to take care of her. Yun Yanli knew that Gu Shijio was slick enough to escape. Therefore, he sealed a few acupuncture points on Gu Zijia's body to the point where she could not even move her fingers. Then he personally went to catch Kun Shui. It was a big fight. There were too many adjectives to describe this battle. However, the end of the battle was just as everyone expected. The giant bird was once again held captive by Yun Yanli. Guardian Jean was severely injured during the fight, as well. He was originally guarding the jade statue, but when he fell, the jade statue also fell from the air. Gu Shijio watched the jade statue fall from the sky from a few hundred meters in height. Her facial expression suddenly changed, and she wanted to teleport into the air to catch it, but she was now powerless. She could not even scream. Jade was extremely fragile, so the statue would definitely break once it fell to the ground. Gu Shijio was always very careful with the jade statue as she understood how fragile it could be. She did not expect that she would let fall from the sky one day, and be unable to protect it. Even an iron statue would be deformed if it fell from such a height. Yun Yanli also saw the jade statue fall. When battling with Kun Shui, he thought that Di Fui was one of the people sitting on the giant bird. Later, he saw that it was a jade statue. He was very disappointed. He thought that Gu Shijio had carved a jade statue of Di Fui, because she missed him. Being caught up with Kun Shui and Guardian Jean, he had no interest in the jade statue. Even when he saw it fall, he did not think twice about it. In fact, he would be happy if the statue crashed and shattered into pieces. The place where the jade statue was headed was a training ground. The ground was cold and hard, so no matter how it fell, she was sure that it would break into pieces. However, just when the jade statue almost touched the ground, a layer of white light suddenly surrounded it. Chapter 25:16. This jade statue was really strange. The white light seemed to have counteracted the momentum of the fall, and supported it to land on the ground gently, without even a trace of dust. Everyone remained silent. Was this a spiritual jade statue? Or was someone protecting it? The jade statue sat there steadily, like a Buddha. An auspicious light surrounded it. The young palace master suddenly shouted, "This is the god statue that appeared the other day." The people who were present at the valley were the elites that Yun Yanli had brought out from Legua City. Looking at the statue more clearly, they agreed with the young palace master. Yes, this is it. It must be it. Whose jade statue is it? There were differing opinions, but the crowd was getting noisier. Gu Shijio seemed to be on a roller coaster ride today. Although she was less worried now. She was too weak to do anything. Yun Yanli squinted slightly and coldly said, "That is the Devil King Di Fui. As I said, he was the one who created the chaos that day." Everyone remained silent. Although the lie that Yun Yanli created was perfect, Kun Zuria's appearance caused the people to be skeptical. Many people secretly went to other cities to check on the starry arrays, but they could not find any of them yet. In fact, many among the elites here today were still unconvinced by Yun Yanli's alibi. However, seeing this jade statue made them suddenly question themselves for doubting Yun Yanli. The man knew that his reputation had been tainted. Little did he know that the opportunity had arrived for him to clear his name. Master, do you think that the Devil King made this jade statue? Or is this the Devil King himself? Was he originally a spiritual jade? The young palace master curiously asked. Yun Yanli looked at Gu Shijie. Although Gu Shijie was trying to stay calm, her pale face sold her out. She clearly cared a lot about this jade statue. Moreover, this jade statue was really strange. He took Gu Shijie back from the young palace master and released a few of her acupuncture points. He then brought her close to the jade statue and smiled as he said, "It seems like Di Fui had really turned into a jade statue. No wonder that he did not help when you experienced the catastrophe. This is unusual. Could it be that his original body is really made of jade?" Gu Shijie closed her eyes and did not speak. She just let him continue to guess. Yun Yanli walked around the jade statue to observe it. He raised his hand and wanted to touch it. This jade statue is really unique. Gu Zijie's facial expression changed. "Do not touch it with your dirty hands." Yun Yanli squinted and sneered. "What can you do if I want to touch it?" He had never gone against Gu Shijie before. But since she could not get her heart, why should he listen to her? After all, she was now merely his prisoner. Besides, he wanted to slap the statue. He raised his palm and was ready to land that slap. He wanted to slap this person for a long time. Even if he could not hit the real person now, he would be satisfied enough to hit his statue. When his palm was about to hit the face of the jade statue, the jade figure suddenly burst into a circle of colorful light and repelled Yun Yanli's palm. Pooh! The colorful light seemed to have crashed into Yun Yanli. The man did not manage to slap the statue, but instead was shocked by the colorful light. This jade statue had a wizardry barrier around his body. Yun Yanli raised his eyebrows in surprise and chuckled. This jade statue is really strange. Chapter 25:17. Worst case scenario was to start over. Earlier, Yun Yanli was only thinking of slapping the statue without any spiritual power. However, given that he had learned more about the statue, and also that it resembled his enemy, he was now more motivated to land a powerful blow to the figure. This time, he put in about 30% of his power into the attack. Don't! Gu Shijie desperately rushed to the jade statue to protect it. Gu Shijie successfully distracted Yun Yanli, who turned his slap into a grab. He picked her up and threw her over to the young palace master. "Look after her." Again, he exercised his spiritual power to land a blow to the statue. However, the result was the same. A colorful light repelled his hand. The counteracting force was stronger than before, which hurt Yun Yanli's hand. Would the colorful light match the force that attacked the statue? Yun Yanli squinted his eyes with evil intention. He now exercised the full capacity of his spiritual power and converged it in his palm. His palm looked as though it was glowing with a wave of power. Being an immortal being herself, Gu Shijie could tell that Yun Yanli yielded the power of a great deity. This kind of force could shatter a diamond into dust. What chance would a jade statue have against it? It would probably turn into powder in less than a second. Although Gu Shijie would risk her life for Di Fui, there was nothing that she could do right now. Running around frantically or screaming would be of no help. Hence, she simply closed her eyes and hoped for the best. If Di Fui were taken down, she would help seek revenge for him if she had to go to hell to do so. She would shred Yun Yanli into pieces and would turn his soul into powder. After that, she would be on the lookout for Di Fui's reincarnation. The worst-case scenario was to start over. Besides, he had reincarnated before. Yun Yanli's fist was headed toward the jade statue. It was so powerful that a gust of strong wind accompanied it. The people nearby had to take a step back. Pang! The earth shook for a few seconds. Everyone clearly covered their ears, and even used their spiritual power to help to protect their ears. Nonetheless, the crashing sound kept them in a daze for a few seconds. The villagers who did not have much spiritual power fell to the ground and vomited even though they covered their ears. The blood in Gu Zijie's chest seemed to tremor vigorously. Her vision went dark for a moment, and her heart sank into the abyss. She merely kept her eyes closed the entire time, afraid to see the end result. The loud gasping from the crowd caught her attention, and her eyelashes flickered as she opened her eyes. She was stunned. The jade statue was still sitting there in good condition. It was as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, Yin Yanli was a few feet away from the statue. The repelling force had pushed him into a boulder, which he crushed upon collision. There were dust and fragments of the boulder all over his body. Nevertheless, Yin Yanli still stood firmly. Although he was not injured, his ego was certainly bruised, and his handsome face turned green. Ha ha! Zhu Duqing laughed. City owner Yin is mighty. You actually flew into the distance from the effect of your own power. Awesome. You looked like a goose that landed on its ass. What a stunning sight. After he was teased by Zhu Duqing, he was even angrier. He raised his palm and wanted to shoot something at Zhu Duqing. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.